ring it off. And then when I'm there, I actually enjoy it. It's so bizarre.
Well, it's like the male mating calls. Like you go in the barber shop and you get the
you have to pay for it. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that blue stuff, whatever that blue thing is they put the combs into, that's heaven. Whatever that smells like, I don't know, Barbasol.
Yeah, probably.
Is that stuff even legal anymore?
I would hope so. I mean, I would hope if they've been running it through our hair for the entire time we've been alive, I'd hope it's still legal.
Well, to be fair, they used to put mercury in our teeth.
Sure. Week 14 is upon us, the biggest week in a lot of ways. Obviously going to be a big slate for NFL DFS best ball coming to a head. Your regular season fantasy football coming to a head. It all comes to a head here in week 14. And of course, we are here with you guys to hold your hands through it all, to keep you cozy and safe in this time of need. Of course, I'm Chris Spags, joined as always on this Sunday First Look show by the man who I've been enjoying hanging out with here, giving you great takes at Fantasy Tips Matt on Twitter as well. He's Matt Belman. How are you doing, Matt?
I'm good, man. Yeah, absolutely love this show. It's a really great start to Sunday morning. Excited to hear what you have to say about this slate and just overall talk it out with you.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one here, and we'll give our overall thoughts, of course, before we go position by position, as we always do on the First Look show. But if you're coming in here, let's get it going right away. Let's hit that like button, make us feel good about ourselves. Of course, we've got Loughy and Ben coming up after us. We have Matt and Eric coming up for the finale. We've got Mike producing today, so a bit of a different change here. Not Jordan out in the West Coast looking hungover with his friends throwing up in his living room. No, we have a professional man here in his Eagles attire, so it's good to be here on the Sunday morning. But it's Zach Moss week once again. Zach Moss going to be the chalk play once again. We'll see what the actual ownership ends up being. Right now, it's stochastic projected for about 30% ownership. You've seen him throughout the course of the week go around 40%-ish. Of course, was the big bust last week. Much better matchup this week for Zach Moss going against the Bengals. But Matt, we're in the same spot we were last week. So I guess your overall thoughts here with it once again being a somewhat cheap Zach Moss slate, not purely as cheap as he was last week.
That's the only difference, right? Is that he's not like the ultimate free square because he's priced up a little bit. Probably not to where he should be considering his workload, but he isn't like the, priced with backups anymore. He's still, close to 6K. That said, he looks like, to me, you could make the case he's the best play on the slate. Certainly one of the top running backs. I think the ownership will certainly be there, but it will be lower than last week, especially with the Chiefs guys now in play. So I think those guys eat into his ownership. I still expect him to be really popular, but he should be. I mean, he's almost one of one in terms of what his expected workload is going to be this week.
Yeah, the red zone work last week, I was sweating that game out. Of course, always try to watch the games that are going to be most important both for that week in DFS, but then also for what's coming up for the future. Just so I could talk about it on the shows here, of course, as well as on my channel on Splash Play here on YouTube. And definitely with Zach Moss, the red zone workload was there. The opportunity was there. It was a tough spot. It's Tennessee defense, and we know what they do best, but over 5 red zone touches in that game. I think it was actually closer to 7 or 8 based on the counts that you're getting from different sites. But Moss heavily involved, does seem like good chalk once again, at least in the theory of it all, but we will see how it goes once the cards flip. Of course, we're going to go position by position and start it off as we always do. And let's go into the position that we try to kick it off with every week, the running backs, obviously talking about Zach Moss a little. And I guess, the main question, Matt's going to be relative to the ownership. Zach Moss right now does seem like we just got an ownership up. Oh, no, this actually might be updated again. Hold on. I'm trying to make sure I have the fresh ownership here on my screen. But Zach Moss, again, going to be the bell of the ball no matter what the ownership is. It seems like, Matt, when it comes for you, are you trying to go heavy Zach Moss? Are you trying to go under the field on Zach Moss? Or are you trying to hold hands once again on Zach Moss and his chalk ownership?
I think you could make the cases for all those. For me personally, I like getting over the field on Moss. I love these guys that let down the field last week, so just inherently you'll have people get off them. He's in a really good spot here against Cincy, and just the workload's there. And for me, he is going to be probably the most popular running back on the slate, projected for 28% ownership. I can't remember what he was projected for last week, but it was like double that. He came in close to 80% in the high dollar single entry stuff. I don't expect anywhere close to that today. So it does change my feeling for him in that regard. I like him more. If I knew he was going to be 80%, I mean, obviously we had an inkling that he was going to be really high owned in those contests, but it gets to a certain point where it's just the leverage getting off a play like that is worth so much. I don't think it's there today. So today I like Moss a lot. I think McCaffrey obviously is the guy you're going to pick to lead running backs in terms of fantasy points, but dollar per dollar, Moss is right at the top of the list. I like him quite a bit today. Do you see it similarly?
Yeah, I like Moss. I think this is actually a better spot going against Cincinnati. Is
Yes.
basically just, a complete blank space of a defense in terms of what they're giving up, where you could basically whatever you're putting up is what you're going to get against Cincinnati's defense. So I think for Zach Moss, seeing that red zone work last week, Cincinnati's defense getting worse by the week as well, obviously having a shootout this past week versus Jacksonville. I think it's a good spot for Zach Moss. I think the one thing that does worry me, though, is the ownership, where Stochastic has him at 28%. Around the industry, I've seen him upwards of 42%. So it does seem like there is a pretty wide band of where that Zach Moss ownership is expected. And I guess if we're going to play the game, Matt, where would you try to put it as the over-under for his ownership? Because I would say, I agree he doesn't get to 60%. I think people being burned by him last week probably puts that off a little bit, as well as the salary coming up a little bit more. But I would guess he's still like in the milli maker. I'm going to guess 48%. Does that seem like a decent over-under, or would you go a little bit lower?
I'm going to take lower. Are you talking like the $20 milli maker?
Yeah, $20 million.
I'm going to take lower there. Just I think people are more apt to get away from the chalky plays there because, there's just less opportunity cost with it being only $20 an entry compared to like the higher milli maker or the higher entry contest. I think it'll be really popular, but I'm going to take under 48. My over-under, honestly, like, I'm kind of where we have it. I'm going to put it at 30%. So we see this a little bit differently.
Okay. So yeah, I would say, and in the milli maker, for what it's worth, he was, I think, 68% last week. So again, I don't think that's going to be quite there, but I think 48% even might be conservative. I think he gets closer to 50 just because of the matchup, and it is an easy plug and play spot. And I do think the field now is sharp enough where in previous iterations of the DFS field, they would go and run away from a guy who busted his chalk the previous week. But now I think they get like, okay, I missed a bad week, or I got a bad week last week. I'm going to then miss a good week because he had played poorly last week. I think people are now sharp enough to know that. So we'll see here. But again, the stochastic number is closer to 30. So we'll see if that moves at all. Of course, as we get into live before lock, as we get into the deeper dive. But that's where Zach Moss is right now. One other chalky running back, though, that is in a completely different price here, Christian McCaffrey. The spot for him, we know the floor is about as good as any running back. Hard to imagine him not putting up 20 in a spot where they're gigantic favorites against Seattle. And it's possible the Seattle line even moves further away. Geno Smith, currently a game time decision, does seem like he's closer to playing than not, but we'll find out if it is a Drew Lock day. Of course, the glorious Drew Lock in play potentially. But Christian McCaffrey in this spot, Matt, he is the chalk at the high dollar spot. It is a situation where you have some cheaper wide receivers to go to. Keenan Allen's prices come down a little bit. Jamar Chase's price is pretty low. Jefferson coming off of IR, his price tag is low. It feels like if you go McCaffrey, you're definitely playing it a little bit safer, I think, but obviously trying to capture some upside against Seattle. Are you with McCaffrey this week in a spot where it does seem like there is not a pure high dollar wide receiver to compete against at the same price tag?
Yeah, I like CMC a lot here. I mean, who doesn't? But yeah, he's a priority for me for sure. Just going back to Moss real quick. I agree with you. I don't have a great feel for this one. Like, I often have very good feels on where I think guys are going to come in, and generally I'm more right than I am wrong. I do not have a good feel on this one. I think all your points are really well taken. Like, people are going to not want to miss it this week after last week. I just think there's other plays that are more pivoty than last week, if you will. As far as CMC goes, I mean, what's not to like? Highest total on the slate. San Fran's a huge favorite here at home, potentially getting Drew Lock on the other side. I mean, he's got 20 plus DraftKings points 5 more times than any other running back in football, or at least on this slate. He's elite in every sense of the word. He's going to be popular. Him and Moss are going to be popular. So if you play those two guys, you probably want to get away from the field in other spots, which I'm totally comfortable doing. So give me CMC and Moss as my 2 favorite running backs on the slate.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, CMC can absolutely put it down here against the Seattle defense. It is getting worse by the week overall in the year. Negative 0.03 EPA per rush, 0.03 positive EPA per red zone rush. Of course, the expected points added metric that tells you how much above average or below average of both the defense and a player performing. And McCaffrey's workload, I mean, over 5.5 red zone touches a game. Like, it's as good as anybody in the league. So I certainly get it. You definitely try to play the Niners pass attack, but it does seem like that'll also be decently owned. Brandon Ayuk projected for over 15% ownership, Debo over 10. George Kittle looks like over 12. So that'd be the way you try to get leverage on McCaffrey, but it feels like this entire Niners passing offense going to be decently owned. I'm a guy that'll be decently owned this week as well, who has not been decently owned recently, but the workload's been getting better, and kind of surprising to see him projected this highly, Matt, 22% ownership, when we did see just a couple weeks ago, Jonathan Taylor in the same match against Tampa Bay. People did not want to go to Jonathan Taylor despite him being one of the best projected plays. But Matt, it seems like this week we're projecting a lot of ownership at Bijan, 22% going his way. Does that pass your sniff test? I guess would be the first question.
Yes and no. Like, there's a bunch of good running backs on this slate. So, like, I understand why the ownership is flat. That said, Bijan is still like the new toy that everyone wants to play with, right? Like he's the rookie running back. He showed signs of being like the guy in terms of the guy you need on any given week. Like one of these weeks, he's apt to go off for like 35, 40 DraftKings points. I don't like him as much as Moss and McCaffrey here. Don't love the spot against Tampa. The ownership's already there. To me, I feel like he's going to come in a little bit lower owned than this, but he's another guy I've kind of struggled with all year because I think people really want to play him for whatever that's worth.
Yeah, I'm currently getting less in the field with the run of sims I did before the show, getting about 13%. I think that's closer to where his ownership lands because I just don't think that people are not going to force in by when they're hand building. They're not going to go, oh, Bijan versus Tampa Bay, great matchup. I have to get there, even though Bijan has consolidated the workload, has consolidated the red zone work a little bit more. I think that if you told me that Clyde Edwards-Helaire was this 22% owned, I think that's a higher probability.
And the other thing for you, if Taylor comes in 20% higher owned than we have projected, that ownership's coming from somewhere. And a guy like Robinson is like a perfect guy to take it from because they're similarly priced.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, Bijan Robinson definitely highly owned. We'll see. Of course, the run of ownership should be coming up over the next few hours. A more recent run here reflecting some of the guys going out, coming in. And some of the injury news, by the way, which there's a little bit more of today than there usually is, does seem like Trevor Lawrence could be trending towards going. Does seem like most of the other guys that we're expecting were on the Q tag line, including Amari Cooper, trending towards going. And then guys are going to be out. Christian Watson, I know, is going to be out. Taysom Hill and Rashid Shaheed. Is there anybody else, Matt, that were noteworthy outs that you've seen this morning?
No, I think you said them all. I mean, one might have slipped my mind, but I don't think so.
Yeah, the Taysom Hill one is a big one. I know the chat.
Right.
I see your pal Steven Leibovitz in chat talking about Alvin Kamara potentially. Kamara's ownership right now is pretty low. I'm not sure if that's going to move around here with Taysom Hill being ruled out. Again, Rashid Shaheed going to be out once again. But Kamara we had at 13%. And we could skip over some of the guys that I'll come back to him. Joe Mixon, Javonte Williams were a little bit higher owned. But Kamara in this spot, man, where no Taysom Hill. Taysom Hill obviously has been a big issue for Kamara, taking away red zone work for Derek Carr as well, taking away some red zone passes, some red zone dropbacks, just running the ball as well. And some of those, it feels like this could consolidate the New Orleans offense. And Alvin Kamara in the past, we have seen him have a pretty big ceiling this year. Obviously, it hasn't been there for, I think, the last 6 weeks or so. But for Kamara, projected right now for 13% ownership, does he seem like a guy to you that could come closer to 20? Because I think Taysom being out wouldn't shock me if he gets driven up quite a bit by that.
Same, but I also don't care. He looks elite. Like, I'm all starting to think, just talking this out, I might like Kamara more than any of the other guys we've talked about, ownership considered. Like, I agree with you. He will get steam. But the problem is, in terms of why I don't think he'll be too high owned, really, really hard to roster him and McCaffrey. I don't think people are going to get off of McCaffrey to roster Kamara. Like, I think they'll try to get off anyone else, but it will be really hard to do that. So, yeah, I think he might end up a little bit higher, but I'm not worried about him. I'm not worried about him like approaching Moss or McCaffrey level ownership. And he looks really, really good here. He passes the eye test. They feed him in the red zone when they're not giving it to Taysom Hill. He catches a ton of balls. I don't know what's not to like about Kamara here.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. I think just anytime you consolidate an offense, and New Orleans is one where, just having Taysom Hill out there mucks up everything that leads to touchdowns, everything that does lead to ceiling games. So for Kamara, I think it looks like a better spot. I personally think I'd prefer Kamara to Christian McCaffrey relative to price, but I actually believe, in your point, Matt, I think is pretty sound, where Kamara is not going to take away Zach Moss ownership. He's probably going to take away Christian McCaffrey ownership, which would mean that I think McCaffrey could come down a little bit. If I had to guess, I think Kamara ends up closer to 20 and McCaffrey is closer to 20. Obviously, with the projections having to update still for that. And that might be the case when ownership runs again, that we just see Kamara come up naturally. But I would think that I would watch out for Kamara because I feel like he's going to be the talk of all the shows like this one. Of course, there's a bunch around the industry doing the same thing. I feel like Kamara gets steamed up because people love this matchup against Carolina. Obviously, it's been kind of hit or miss from the chalk running backs. Kenneth Walker, famously a couple of weeks ago, of course, failed a 60% chalk in some of the big tournaments out there. But I think for Kamara, consolidating the role plus the matchup, he might be the chalkiest running back in the week, if not Zach Moss by the end of it.
Damn. I don't know if I agree, but I don't disagree. And where I see it is, I'm not going to give a number and where I think he's owned. But right now, we've got, Rachaad White, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Josh Jacobs, Javonte Williams, Joe Mixon, Bijan Robinson, McCaffrey, and Moss, all projected to be higher owned. I wouldn't be surprised at all if he jumps like 5 of those dudes.
Yeah, that's where I am with it. It's possible that McCaffrey stays ahead. I think it's likely Zach Moss stays ahead. But Kamara, to me, I think will take a surge upwards. But of course, Loughy and Ben will talk about that. Matt and Eric will talk about that as well. And of course, we will get a data update on Stochastic coming up in a little bit here. Other players to talk about that we skipped over: Joe Mixon, Javonte Williams, Josh Jacobs, all guys who are pure bell cow backs. Different situations, obviously, for all of them. Mixon getting some more checkdowns, obviously with Jake Browning. Very efficiency focused offense for Jake Browning right now to get that catchable ball rate. It took a huge jump for him for what it's worth on Monday Night Football. We're going into that game, I believe he was under 60% catchable ball rate. Now he's up to over 75%. So
Wow.
kind of speaks to like how much they were really focused. And if you watch the game, as I'm sure, Matt and I both did, like a lot of swing passes to Jamar Chase, a lot of checkdowns to Joe Mixon. Mixon also looked, frankly, like he had the most juice he's had all year, though. Chase Brown also broke some big runs in that one. So it might be the offensive line gelling a little bit better. But if you had to choose one of these backs, Mac, to really go to and to really stump for here with Mixon, Javonte, Josh Jacobs, does one of them stand out amongst the others, or are they kind of get an even share of them in whatever the Sims or the optimizer give you, are you willing to go with?
I think it's Mixon. Like, just at that price, he seems too cheap given his current production. Watching that game, having a lot of Mixon, I was a little bit worried about Chase Brown. He was fantastic in college last year. Anyone eating into Mixon's carries almost looked like it helped him, though. Just getting a little bit of rest. He still was on the field a ton. He had bell cow workload, and he was involved in the passing game. So, I know the fancy narrative or the popular narrative is that Mixon's dust. He looked pretty damn good to me on Monday night. So, for me, between those three guys, it's Mixon. I think Javonte Williams is pretty game script dependent. If you think the Broncos are in this game and win this game, he is a really good play. If not, he's not.
Yeah, the Broncos definitely want to run the ball if they can. Does seem like in the matchup, we've talked about the Broncos D a lot here. Did see the monster performance from Nico Collins last week, kind of highlighting what we talked about the Broncos, where getting good results in terms of the points per game not being allowed, not as high, certainly as the 70-point apex for when they faced Miami, but still giving up good production across the board. And I do think I've heard some sharp people across the industry talking this week about how if Denver gets pressed in a passing ball a little bit more, you are going to see maybe Keenan Allen get there, be more likely to get there. The Broncos definitely love a run-first approach, though. So if the game does stay competitive and does stay in a spot where Keenan Allen's not having that success, feels like Javonte has a game script that works. But for the Mixon point, though, I'm with you on Mixon. I really am not a Mixon guy. I thought he was live to lose the job in the offseason, obviously with some of his offseason, things off the field, not the greatest either. But Mixon, I thought, looked the best he's looked all year in that last game. And obviously that is an eye test thing, but the results were there as well for Mixon. So I'm with you. I think that game for Indianapolis versus Cincinnati, Indianapolis's play volume is so high on their end. Of course, one of the fastest paced teams in the league. And they also don't take their foot off the gas pedal for the most part either. So Mixon is kind of a sneaky play. And there's a chat question too, Matt, about would you play Zach Moss and Mixon together? Normally not a good thing to do. I think you get away with it a little bit here. I know that I would force my way to it too much, but I feel like with the pace of that game and just the two defenses, I wouldn't mind playing Moss and Mixon together. But do you feel differently, Matt?
I don't. It's the pace of the game. It's also, most importantly, the price tags. They're both inexpensive enough where they could easily get there. Two expensive running backs can certainly happen, but just takes a lot more. I want to touch on our ownership points real quick because I think you'll firmly agree with this, but tell me not. A guy like Breece Hall, we have projected to be 12% owned under Kamara. 12% owned right under Kamara. I could see him coming in at 1% owned. So that 10% is going to go elsewhere. And he's not the only guy like that.
Yeah, I agree with that as a take. I don't think Breece gets that highly under, especially with the Q tag on DraftKings. Obviously, he will be going today. That was the most recent report, but has the Q tag on all week, which does sometimes lead to driving down the ownership, especially for the hand builders out there. So I agree. I think if I had to guess the two guys who get steamed up, I think ownership really consolidates for CEH and Kamara more than we have currently reflected. If I had to guess, I think CEH gets to 20 to 30% based on just the inertia of his price tag. I don't know that that's a great play. The projections wouldn't push you to that as a fantastic play, but he is a strong value that'll definitely come up easily in an optimizer. And Kamara, I think, gets above 20% by the time the cards are flipped. But I'm with you. I think the ownership this week, I think was reflecting a more rational approach where people spreading out their ownership. That's what it should be. But the field consolidates so much that I just think it's going to consolidate around at least a handful of guys. And to me, it's CH and Kamara.
I'm with you. And I'm actually totally with you on Bijan now. Just after talking about all these guys, I think Bijan comes much closer to 10% than 20%. And that ownership's going to be filtered throughout the guys you just talked about. So we see that eye to eye.
Yeah, so an interesting game here. I see the chat as well talking about some of the similar things as well. And yeah, Taysom Hill being out, guys, is why the Kamara part is really going to be an important one. And Taysom Hill is officially out as a foot injury for him that I guess he's been dealing with the last few weeks. So that is going to be the case. So we didn't talk about some other guys that are still perfectly valid plays. The Detroit running backs, I would say valid plays. Kyron Williams, valid plays. Jerome Ford, of course. Matt loves Cleveland. Jerome Ford in a spot against Jacksonville that we could see some good production for him for sure in a game that certainly, Jacksonville not going to be full go here with Trevor Lawrence banged up and Christian Kirk out for a month and a half with whatever happened to his groin in that last game. But anybody you want to particularly point out here, and also Zach Charbonnet, Kenneth Walker, both active. So feels like they both cut into each other. But anybody you really want to cape for? I feel like Kyron maybe in a windy game versus Baltimore, but very low total in that spot for the Rams. So it feels like maybe it's not a Kyron week either.
He's another guy we have projected for 7% ownership. I think it comes in under that, especially with Baltimore being the highest owned D on the slate. He's like expensive-ish at 7.3. If Kamara is going to get love at 8,200, guys around him have to fall off. And I think he's a perfect example of a guy who falls off. Same with Austin Eckler, who hasn't been really good. There's really no one here I love. The Detroit guys make sense to me. A guy like James Cook makes sense. I think the one guy like in this group that I like that isn't projected to get a lot of ownership is Jerick McKinnon. KC is void of offensive options. We've seen McKinnon produce in the past. Everyone rushing to Clyde Edwards-Helaire because he's 600 cheaper. Like, I get it. But what happens if the Bills get up in this game? I mean, you're going to see a lot of McKinnon. I actually prefer McKinnon to Clyde Edwards-Helaire in tournaments. I think McKinnon is higher upside. I think if you're looking for 12 fantasy points, Edwards-Helaire is probably the guy, but 20 or higher, it's McKinnon all day for me.
Yeah, I think CEH should be the play in cash. Like unequivocally,
Yes.
I would think it's Zach Moss, CEH in cash, maybe putting CMC as well or Kamara, based on where that ends up shaking out in terms of the ownership. But yeah, I think I like McKinnon's live for the fact too that it could just be that he gets third and longs when they're in the red zone and he gets the pass game work. So I agree with that take. Like, I think McKinnon is a more valid play than he would be. And also one thing to point out too is like Pacheco's taken some McKinnon work. Obviously McKinnon's been out the last few weeks as well, but he's taken a little bit of McKinnon work because Pacheco's so good. CEH is not like as good of a pass catcher, even though he came in with those Marshall Faulk kind of vibes, has not lived up to them. So I think just all the pass game work, I would expect to go McKinnon, or at least, 80% of the pass game work or something like that. He's
not as good in any sense of, in any phase as Pacheco, which also gets me worried about how much his workload is here. Like, you're not going to see him have a Pacheco-like workload here. The problem is they don't have really offensive weapons they want to give the ball to either. So I'm interested to see what we see from Kansas City today.
Yep. Yeah, I think it's an interesting spot. I mean, certainly a game that I think people will target. Does seem to me like the alternate betting markets are maybe pushing towards an under, which I guess doesn't surprise me based on the KC defense, but how Buffalo has played, a little bit of surprise there. But we'll see how that goes. Definitely a key game to talk about. And certainly, again, the deeper dive guys, Loughy and Ben coming up right after this one, should be doing a real deep dive on that one in particular with some of the options, some of the upside of a game that's certainly a lot of the field to be going after aggressively. Any other running backs you want to talk about, or can we move on to wide receivers?
Let's move on.
All right, wide receivers, guys, coming up next. And smash that like button if you can. Of course, a big day of streams here on Stokastic. Again, week 14, the most crucial week of it all. We need your guys' support here. Help us keep ahead of the Joneses out there. Keep the YouTube algorithm gods happy. So please smash that like button. And of course, shout out to our sponsor, Owner's Box. We'll talk more about coming up in a minute. But great site to play on. If you're not playing on there, make sure to check it out. You can see our producer, Mike, here pulling up the content schedule. Lots of content coming on today, including that First Look show we're doing right now. Deeper Dive live before lock. And of course, the Showdown live before lock. An actual good game. Philly versus the Cowboys coming up tonight. So it should be a fun one, and surprising to see the Cowboys such heavy favorites in that one, a lot of markets, but we'll see how that goes. The Eagles may be going the wrong way. You're heading into the playoffs. Sorry for our producer, Mike, who probably doesn't want to hear that as I'm trying to laud his work here, pulling up a graphic. We got Brandon Ayuk as a chalk wide receiver on the week. And it's really weird this week, Matt, where we talked about a lot of the running back ownership consolidating, maybe consolidating further. At wide receiver, this is probably the flattest ownership we've had all year, at least projected for right now. Nobody above 20% owned at wide receiver. Brandon Ayuk, number one at 16. Keenan Allen at a lower version of 16. DJ Moore coming in at 16 as well. And again, rounding up a little bit more there. Is there anybody that you feel like should be the chalk play of the week? Because it seemed like Keenan Allen was going that way. I thought he would be based off of, again, like Nico Collins almost put up 200 yards against the same Denver team. It's the same situation for the Chargers where they don't have anybody else to go to. Last week, Nico benefited from Tank Dell getting banged up pretty early in that game. For Keenan Allen, I think he should be 20 to 25% owned. But people, I guess, we talked about it enough here. People do respect Denver's defense, even though I don't believe they should. But who do you think should be the chalk wide receiver on the week?
The guy that I think should be and probably will be is DJ Moore. I've seen him mentioned everywhere. He's too cheap. 6,500 for him. He's been really, really productive, especially with Fields. So I think he's the guy that is going to end up being, the highest or second or third highest owned receiver on the slate. It makes sense to me. I'll bounce your Keenan Allen point, and here's my question to you. Why is Justin Jefferson getting no love?
I think the variables involved with that, where Dobbs has not been great feeding the outside receivers. Clearly, going back to Arizona, his tight ends had about a 30% target share some weeks, 25 to 30% for the most part. So I think that's part of it. I agree, though, that Jamar Chase, who's picking up some ownership, I think Jefferson being a little bit cheaper than Allen, and then Jamar Chase would be a pretty interesting 1-2 at wide receiver, just because Chase is under 8K. Jefferson should be priced normally around 9K, but he is obviously mid 8K this week. I agree with you. I think that Jefferson should be a little bit higher owned, but I get why he's not, because people want the security and want to know he's going to go back out there and be full go, I guess.
Yeah, I guess I do too. I mean, it makes sense. I know why he's not as high owned as he probably otherwise would be on a normal week, because he's just coming back. Dobbs is his QB. I love plays like that, though. I mean, he's arguably the best wide receiver in football. Now, Tyreek Hill's making a strong case for that right now, but going into this year, I think everyone would say it's Jefferson. He's been productive no matter who's at quarterback, so I like the idea of going to him in tournaments. He's got the highest upside of any receiver on the slate because it's Justin Jefferson.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. And also have to defend a point, I guess, people pushing back on me saying the Eagles going the wrong way. And again, no offense to Mike here, Mike earmuffs if you need to do it. I feel like this has been a case all year long where Jalen Hurts is just turning over the ball a little bit more, and Mike is showing off his Eagles-based shirt here, so we know where his support lies. But I would say this thing for me that stands out is just that they've put themselves in a lot more precarious spots over the course of this season, where Jalen Hurts throwing more pick sixes, throwing more picks in high leverage spots. So that to me is where they're going the wrong way. And I think the metrics also back it out, where last year Jalen Hurts is a world beater in terms of the EPA metrics. This year just barely positive for the most part. And actually I think came back down just a little bit above positive in terms of the matchup last week against the Cowboys. So that's why I feel that way. It's not just them playing poorly one week. I think what happened last week was a thing that's kind of been building up to rear its ugly head. And frankly, for the Eagles, probably better they get it out of the way now than have that happen, after they get the bye or something like that. But that's how I feel about the Eagles personally. I don't know, Matt, if you want to wage into this battle here, but I just feel like the Eagles to me have been teetering precariously on being great this year. And then it's there's not as effective as they were last year, which I think is okay to point out and might be an important thing to note.
Yeah, I think I see it from both sides. I understand what you're saying on the surface. I see why Philly fans would fire back at that, because prior to last week, they had just beaten Buffalo and Kansas City. Now, to your point, though, those are games they probably should have lost. Now, the NFL is filled with games like that, but Philly got outplayed by Kansas City again. They got outplayed by Buffalo. They ended up winning those games, but they still got outplayed, and then they got severely outplayed by San Fran. So, record-wise, no, they're not trending down, but on the field, I agree with you. They don't look like the same team as last year. They don't look as good as, obviously, San Francisco or Dallas right now. So tonight's a big game.
Yeah, that's where I am with it too, is that I think Dallas has shown, that they are willing to this is a gross way to put it, but they're willing to slit some throats. They're willing to keep kind of going up heavy and keep passing and being aggressive. Whereas I think the Eagles are teetering a little bit more this year than they would have last year. And the chat's saying it too. Einsteinium, excuse me, in the chat saying Eagles OC is awful. I think that's what it is. Obviously, I'm a Shane Steichen sycophant. Thought he was the thing that was going to change everything for the Colts, and my boy Anthony Richardson, and he has changed everything for the Colts. But I think Brian Johnson's been a pretty big downgrade there. And Laffy might have opinions on Live Before Lock, or on Deeper Dive, coming up next. But I would say that to me, that's the eye test, but going to be more relevant for the showdown Live Before Lock coming up later. But that is to defend my take. I think this is where you do pick up, a little bit of advantages by knowing these teams week in, week out, and then not expecting the team to be the same as last year. It's not the same Eagles team. That's fundamentally it. DJ Moore, you mentioned being potential chalk here. Obviously, Justin Fields, we're going to talk about later on in the QB section, but do you feel like Moore gets above 20%? Because I agree. I've actually had people in the splash play community point out, like I was talking about stochastic ownership, and they were like, I think he's going to be a lot higher. And I think they were like offended almost that DJ Moore is projected lowly when I talked about it on Friday. Now he's over 15%. If you were to pick one guy like we did for the running backs, is Moore the guy you think surges up and has a shot to get to 20-25% owned?
Definitely. I think he's the guy. His price tag more than anything, it goes back there. It all works together, right? If Kamara ends up being a little bit more popular, which he probably will be, he's 8,200. So you got to look for, cheaper guys elsewhere. Moore fits that build, and you don't have to sacrifice any upside to get there. So yeah, I think he's the most popular wide receiver on the slate. That said, your point's well taken earlier. Like, the ownership projections are flat, and it's because there's a lot of good plays here.
Yep, I'm with you on that. And another guy who I've really enjoyed the last few weeks, Michael Pittman. And I guess we should really fully gloss over Brandon Ayuk because we did talk about the chalk ownership here. Are you willing to go to Ayuk if he is going to be, potentially the chalk wide receiver here, where we're projecting him right now for 16%? It feels like he could be the guy that gets to 20% just because of that high total for the Niners. We did see Debo go off last week, though. Debo is $100 cheaper. Are you with Ayuk? Like, let's say that this holds where the ownership is right now. Do you feel like Ayuk deserves to be the number one wide receiver overall, or is that just kind of a symptom of the slate like you're talking about with some of the price tags?
I don't think he's a bad play by any stretch, but I don't understand why he's the most popular player on this wide receiver we have projected on the board. Like, I think he's a good play. He doesn't really look underpriced to me, though. So that's why I think a guy like DJ Moore ends up being more popular than Ayuk, especially if people are also rostering McCaffrey. Like, I get that San Fran is the highest total and people want exposure there, but there's also a bunch of other games and you're allocating a lot of your salary doing that. So maybe it's a situation where, like, Kamara's comes up, McCaffrey's comes down, and Ayuk stays and is really high. I don't think it plays out like that. I think Ayuk comes, kind of in like the 5th to 10th highest wide receiver on the slate, but we shall see. I do think DJ Moore, like 400 cheaper than Ayuk, is definitely higher owned than Ayuk here.
Yeah, the cheaper play who is, definitely has more of a consolidated offense. And we have seen, Fields, since he's been back out there, trying to feed DJ Moore a little bit more. Obviously, no pun intended there. I think that kind of makes Kmet a more interesting play as a result if we do think Moore gets steamed up that much. But I agree, the price tag's a little bit low. Fields is certainly feeding air yards as well as targets DJ Moore's way. And you have to put up points against Detroit, even though that game, I think weather concerns earlier in the week does seem like winds are closer to 13 miles per hour. So not anything you'd worry about in that game now. I'm with the DJ Moore take. I'm curious to see, because I think Keenan Allen is, to me, like the kind of guy that when he was looking for 25% ownership early in the week, I'm like, yes, that makes sense. For Moore, I don't know that it makes quite as much sense for me for him to get that high, but it does seem like he's the most likely candidate. I agree based on the content now, kind of thinking through the stuff that I listen to. Michael Pittman is an interesting play to me because I think he is a player where you put him with Zach Moss. We talked about this last week, and he ended up having a good enough game to win tournaments. I don't know if he finished in the top tournament line, but I forget how that worked out. But Pittman, a great play to decrease that ownership product for Zach Moss. Great way to get leverage if you're not playing Zach Moss. How do you feel about Michael Pittman in this spot with the price tag coming up? Finally getting some touchdown equity, had the game-winning TD last week. How do you feel about Pittman at 7,300, Matt?
I like him a lot. I mean, he's another guy really emerging as a true wide receiver one. Minshew being behind center has helped him dramatically. Obviously, they're missing Anthony Richardson, but Minshew's more of like a pocket quarterback. So Pittman's been so productive. I mean, doesn't mean that he's going to be this productive or that productive this week, but no reason he shouldn't be. Good matchup against Cincinnati, team that, just played on Monday night. I like Pittman a lot here. I think his ownership, this is one I'm not really sure how to peg it. Wouldn't be surprised if he comes in closer to 20%. Wouldn't be surprised if he comes in closer to 10%. So I think his 15% projection is right. Yeah, he looks really good. He looks like a cog in the machine type to me.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like, I think it's hard to see him, having the kind of ceiling that makes it impossible for him to like if you don't have them, like,
right,
you're still gonna be able to win a tournament. I think for the
he's
most
not that
part.
guy.
Yes, but like he could be a part of a winning lineup where you have Moore, you have Pittman, you have maybe somebody who's a little bit more of a pay down like a Rice or a Garrett Wilson, and that's your wide receiver core, and all those guys are capable of giving you 25 to 30, and then you hit it running back. I think that's where Pittman makes sense. But I like Pittman as a player. I think he's more like definitely more of a DraftKings play than a FanDuel play. Let me see the FanDuel ownership for Pittman. Have to assume it's not nearly as high. Pittman on FanDuel 11%. And he's at an 8K salary, so like you're not playing him on FanDuel. But for the most part, though, I think for Pittman, like for full point PPR, definitely the kind of guy that can get there, but he's just not going to give you a 40-point game that makes you completely regret it. Some cheap guys behind him in the ownership, Matt, where we have Rashee Rice, Garrett Wilson, Drake London. Certainly cases could be made for all of them. Tampa Bay's defense on the year giving up a lot of production in the pass game, mostly out of the slot, but definitely enough overall that I could see people wanting to target that. Garrett Wilson, obviously getting an upgrade at QB, I guess technically with Zach Wilson coming back in. It's been not better without Zach Wilson. So for Garrett Wilson, at least we know he will get fed targets, will have some upside. And then Rashee Rice, we've seen have some big games. Obviously, the snap share came back down with Kadarius Toney back in the mix. Hard for Rashee Rice to get above 70%, it feels like, in the current configuration. But he's also a guy that could theoretically benefit from the lack of Pacheco. If you had to really make a stand for one of these guys with Rice, Garrett Wilson, and Drake London, Matt, who do you want to make a stand for?
I am making a stand, so I will make that stand on the show, and that's Garrett Wilson. I hate to say it, but I actually kind of like the Jets offense here. And when I say the Jets offense, I really mean Zach Wilson, Garrett Wilson, and Tyler Conklin. Just their price tags are so cheap. I'm not going to sit here and tout them and say they're going to be the highest scoring stack on the slate. I do think you see a rejuvenated Jets offense, though, in a game at home against a defense that's played better lately, but early in the season was not very good. These last few games is, a big time spot for Zach Wilson to prove he belongs in the league. I don't think he's great, but for fantasy purposes, he does a lot of the things we want. He runs a little bit. Houston will probably score here, so the Jets are going to need to score. And his main target is Garrett Wilson. I mean, he's just too cheap at 5,500. He's a guy, he doesn't have massive upside with Zach Wilson behind center, but he's got big upside for that price point. And I think he's just a really good play on this slate, especially considering I like the Jets to put up points today.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair way to look at it. I think Garrett Wilson's been, about as effective as he can be relative to this offense not being very good on the year. And as a result, Garrett Wilson himself has suffered in terms of both the target share, in terms of the results, negative 0.16 EPA per target is not the best for this kind of guy that we're expecting Garrett Wilson to make the leap heading into year two. But he has, at $5,500, it kind of doesn't matter where you are talking about comparing him to Rashee Rice, who's obviously in a better offense, but Garrett Wilson, a lot more consolidated workload for him. And Drake London, who we all want to be a thing, but in reality in that game, I have to assume Atlanta's going to want to really run the ball pretty aggressively and just try to keep Tampa Bay off the field because that's how they want to win. So I agree, out of the cheap guys, I think Garrett Wilson is probably a cut above Rashee Rice and Drake London. Drake London, hard to ignore the $4,600 price tag, though. I feel like we could talk about a lot of players here, so we need to kind of pare it down. We have Jamar Chase, who I think is a strong play. Deebo Samuel, who I think makes sense, especially in stacks with Brock Purdy without Christian McCaffrey. Chris Olave should get some more consolidated targets as well for the same reasons we talked about. No Taysom Hill, no Rashid Shaheed, still no Michael Thomas as well. And then Amon-Ra St. Brown at 8,200 is just a little bit too cheap in a matchup against Chicago. Anybody you really want to pump up here, Matt, because I feel like there's a lot of cases to be made for a lot of different guys. And that's not even including the Mike Evans kind of tournament plays of it all. Who do you want to stand up for here?
Yeah, I'll call out a couple guys like you did, but I think you're absolutely right. There's a ton of guys that all look to be in play here, especially in tournaments. First off, I agree with your Rashee Rice point. I think you can make the case for him over Wilson just because of who's at quarterback. And you're right. I think the loss of Pacheco could end up really helping, the Kelce's and Rices of the world. As far as other guys we didn't talk about, Josh Downs is intriguing to me. Elijah Moore, who I talked about last week. Parker Washington, now that Lawrence is expected to be quarterback at 3K. And then another guy opposite Justin Jefferson, Devontae Adams, another guy. He's really cheap for his upside. Yeah, I like Pittman. Just, if you ask me who was going to score 15 fantasy points, I'd choose Pittman. But if you ask me who got 30, I'd say it was Adams.
Yeah, no, I think that's a correct way to look at it. I didn't realize he was so cheap at 7,500 either. And as Matt mentioned, projected for under 5% ownership as well. And people ask about Justin Jefferson in the chat. He's currently projected for 6% ownership. So definitely a conservative projection, but you really could just play Devontae at 7,500. Chase at 7,600. Like, you're playing guys that if the season were a little bit more hospitable to them, a little bit more kind, like these are 8K, 9K receivers for the most part, and they're about as cheap as they'll ever be. And I think there's, Matt, a pretty good case like to just pay up for three guys that feel a little bit underpriced, where if you paid up for Jefferson, Chase, and let's say Devontae, that's like a loaded 3 wide receiver room, and you're getting away from Christian McCaffrey or running back. So I think that makes actually a lot of tournament sense, even though paying down for Parker Washington, I think also makes some tournament sense.
I agree. And if you didn't want to spend up like for Jefferson there, I think the other perfect guy, because I was looking at this a little bit when I was looking at the slate, is Cooper Kupp. Like, not in a great spot, but he's 7,400. Chase, Cooper Kupp, and Adams are all guys that have been close to 9K for much of their careers. Now they're like 7,500-ish.
Yeah, it's interesting, man. Like, because that is really like guys that were going in the first round. Again, we're talking about best ball earlier for how important it is in week 14 right now. But to see Adams at 7,500, where Michael Pittman is 73, I love Michael Pittman. And obviously, this has not been a good year for Devontae Adams, but competitive game at home here for Devontae, like 7,500. That's a really low price tag for a guy that we do know has, a 40-point game in his bag, let alone 20 and 30-point games. So I think Devontae stands out as being that low owned, and Jefferson too. Like, I think that Keenan Allen's probably a better play and feels safer to me with, a similar range of outcomes for the ceiling. But if we do see Dobbs force feed Jefferson, and that's kind of the thing too, where Dobbs starting, like, he has to feed Jefferson and prove he could do that, because that's why they were considering benching him. I think it's an interesting spot to go to these cheaper guys, because Jefferson, he would be in his worst case scenario, Matt, he's still probably like a 9K receiver, I would think, at least 8,900.
And Dobbs isn't great, but Dobbs has at least proven he can move. They can move the ball, and he is going to, force feed Jefferson, because why wouldn't he? Man, I'm with you. I look at these price tags, and it's hard not to have interest in these guys who are, routinely just much, much more expensive. Interested to see how this ownership plays out. I had a point, but I lost my train of thought, so we'll have to skip it for now.
And then we got the bank depositor. I think it should be the bank depositor. I think he said that this question, but thoughts on Jags wide receiver value with Kirk out. Obviously, Parker Washington absorbed a lot of those snaps. I feel like for me, Matt, like, I agree there's opportunity there, especially for Parker Washington, who basically became the 1-to-1 replacement for Christian Kirk. But we also saw Jones get more work in that game. I think those guys look interesting, but the matchup against Cleveland, who of course Matt's favorite team, I feel like it's not the spot I really want to go to those guys too much and expect results. But I could see, being with the field's 5% ownership on Parker Washington.
Parker Washington's a price play. He's 3K. And if he catches 4 balls, he's probably a good play, or at least a decent play at 3K. I think you're doing yourself a disservice by going out of your way to play guys against Cleveland, especially at home. Guys from Jacksonville going to Cleveland. Cleveland's defense has been really, really good this year, especially at home. So I don't like the spend up guys, but Zay Jones is probably too cheap for his role. And then Parker Washington is too cheap for his role. Just going back, and I remembered my point at the beginning of the show when we were talking about running backs, I said, I personally don't have a problem playing Chalky, McCaffrey, and Moss, because I'll get different elsewhere. We just talked about a few of those guys I really like getting different with. Justin Jefferson, Devontae Adams. Yeah, they don't project as high as like the Pittmans of the world, but you're certainly not sacrificing any upside by pivoting there.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. I think that's definitely a way to chop that ownership product down. And that's what it's all about here. Obviously, more relevant for NBA sometimes with the volatility of football, but you can play chalky players. You just need to decrease that ownership product somewhere else. And the way that Matt suggested that, I think is a pretty smart way to go that. But one place you don't have to worry as much about decreasing your ownership is going to be over at Owner's Box. Of course, the site that helps us put on this show every week, the entire run of shows here, including the deeper dive and live before lock coming up in a little bit here. And of course, what they're doing for you right now is one of the best deals you will find in the world of DFS, not only because you are playing on a site that is overlay every week, that has at least a reduced VIG, decreased rake on every single slate as well, because there's not as many people playing on Owner's Box yet. That is a big advantage for you if you play over there. And that's a lesson I've learned time and time again with other sites over the years, where some of the sharpest DFS players in the world play on these lesser sites because they're competing less against the Osmos, against the Uticows, against the Whistles Go Woo out there, the top DFS players that you all expect. So they're not on Owner's Box as much. That's a benefit for you. The other benefit is you can get your deposit matched up to $500. So if you put in $500, they will match up to $500, but it also counts for if you deposit $10. But more money you put in, obviously going to be better for you. And that's, just part of the deal there as well, where you're also getting a free Lightning lineups entry, which is worth $5, an additional $5 contest ticket. So basically their Lightning lineups thing is like swiping swiping through on Tinder, for any of you guys out there who were in the fruitful days of Tinder before it got taken over by bots and influencers, you used to be able to go on there and swipe and find love. And much like on Owner's Box, you could swipe and find love with your lineups on there. It is a fun process, a different DFS process out there. That is what Owner's Box is all about, in addition to the super flex part of it, where you're not worried about some of the same plays. You get to build some different kinds of teams, and it's a format that has been figured out. So that is the selling point for Owner's Box. You must be over 18 years of age or the minimum age for permissible use in your jurisdiction. Always fun to mix that in. See the site terms and conditions for the playthrough requirements. And of course, check out 1-800-GAMBLER if you are in a troublesome spot. But if you are not, check out an Owner's Box, because not playing on Owner's Box is also a troublesome spot, I would say. But let's go and let's keep talking about some of the positions here, Matt, because we do have to hit on a few more here. You do have the tight ends, of course, the glory hounds of the entire DFS slate, always looking for attention. We actually have some incredible players at tight end this week, where you have Kittle, you have Kelsey, you also have some paydown options, and Njoku, who we talked about last week, maybe a little bit of a trap chalk play, but he is in play once again at one of the higher projected plays at tight end. But once again, nobody projected for over 15% at tight end, so it is a pure choose your own adventure kind of tight end week. And what is going to be the adventure you choose here, Matt, amidst all these tight ends, many of whom look like the exact same player?
For me, it's easy. Give me Brevin Jordan here. Way too cheap. Stroud is good. I like the Jets in that game. He's the perfect run back. I would expect Sauce Gardner to be all over Nico Collins here. So, again, didn't matter last week with whatever Surtain was doing, but, I respect Sauce Gardner. I think that Jordan gets his targets here. He's way too cheap. I do not understand why he's projected for only 4% ownership. If I were a betting man, I would say he comes in 10% or higher personally.
Yeah, I think that's a fair way to look at it. I think Brevin Jordan, not the most exciting player in the world overall.
He sucks.
But he's not great. He did absorb enough of the role. You think that sucks with him too, is like, because he has the single-digit jersey, he looks like a better player than he is if you're watching him out there, where he looks like all the guys with single digits look a little bit faster. And you're like, man, maybe he could be a dude. And he just has the same Brevin Jordan game he had all of last year.
Yeah, I like him at 3,100. It's a price play. I also like Conklin at 3K. Wilson has shown that he likes Conklin. They're certainly devoid of weapons outside of Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall. So I like both tight ends there, 3K and 3,100. The other guy that's interesting to me, I think Kittle's ownership makes sense because I think he's $1,000 less than he was last week. Kelsey is intriguing to me. Now, he always ends up higher owned than whatever projections have him for. He hasn't been elite this year. I think you could see Mahomes throw a little bit more with no Pacheco, but I'm also worried Kelsey's just not the same guy he's been anymore. He looks older this year than he has in the past. Now, doesn't mean he couldn't have an amazing day today, but you're still spending $7,800 on him. Where do you think he comes in owned at?
That's tough, man, because I feel like the Kittle ownership, I don't ever want to play Kittle when he's the highest owned player, but I do think people will go there either as part of Purdy stacks or as leverage against CMC. So, I think he probably gets to 12 to 15. Kelsey might get to 12 to 15 just because he's the only name brand tight end on the slate. That people don't seem like they're going to want to pay for tight end because all the projection plays are 3K to 4,500. So I think Kelsey holds under 15. But he should be just relative to the slate where you need to get points. And obviously, if we're going to assume he's the same guy, in my mind, he should be 20% owned just because there's no other tight end that projects decently and looks that good who isn't just a value play. So I will probably play more Kelsey because of that. But the field, I think, won't get about 15 would be my guess.
It's just really interesting to me. We talked about how no Pacheco, Clyde Edwards-Helaire is going to fill that role, but they're not going to give him the rock as much as they give Pacheco. What if they start running kind of pass/runs, pass plays that are more or less extension of the run game? And a lot of those will go to Kelsey. So this is a big game for both teams. I don't think you have to prioritize him here, but I could easily see him being a really, really good play at lower than usual Kelsey ownership.
Especially just relative to the game theory of the week. The fact that Kelsey hasn't hit now, in the Taylor Swift thing, we've made jokes about it. It does legitimately seem like the sample size is now big enough to say that he was better this year with her in attendance than he was in games without her. But obviously, that doesn't matter quite as much relative to a DFS slate where you're getting Travis Kelsey at 10% owned on a day where everybody's going to go to George Kittle and you have direct leverage you can get on Kittle with the other pass catchers or CMC himself. And then everybody else is going to be playing Njoku or Kyle Pitts or Likely or Cole Kmet, who I think is a perfectly valid play with DJ Moore's ownership being where it is. Kmet could be the guy that absorbs some touchdowns. But this is like the week where you go to Kelsey, like I think, because there's just nothing else, like nothing else even has a projection over 10 that you feel good about.
Yeah, and I don't love the Njoku ownership unless it's DTR starting, which I don't expect it to be. We talked about this last week and nailed it on the head. Like with DTR starting, it's Njoku. He saw a ton of targets. He was DTR's safety blanket. Flacco is much more apt to look outside. Now, I'll say this about Njoku. Like, you could say he's the Browns' second best receiving option behind Cooper, so he's going to get his looks. But Flacco's got rapport with Moore. Like, I like Elijah Moore way more than Njoku here.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And I think, Amari Cooper's going to go today, right? Is that?
Yeah, he is, which is, I like that, though, just for the Browns offense, because I worry you can make the argument both ways. Like without Cooper, the targets are going to go up for Njoku and Moore, but also without Cooper, I'm not sure how much they'd be able to move the ball.
Yeah, no, I think I agree with that. I think Cooper does hurt Moore enough where I'm not going to see the 12 targets that you saw last week coming Moore's way. But obviously, like opening things up for the slot a little bit more would be nice. And, Moore, frankly, like as he did absorb some of those Cooper routes, like I don't know if you feel differently, Matt, because I'm sure you're watching the game more closely than I was. Just not as good of like a downfield outside receiver as Cooper is, where Amari, is going to be reliable in the boundaries and make a play. Like I don't think Moore has it in his bag.
I've had mixed feelings about Amari throughout his career. I thought he was often hot and cold, like amazing one year, not so much the next year. And he's not like the top tier of elite receivers, but he's on that next tier. And him being in Cleveland, I don't know if there's a Cleveland athlete that I've been more like impressed with just by the way he goes about his business, the way he handles his things. And he is, the Browns aren't that talented offensively without Chubb and Watson. He is their best offensive weapon. So like they need him on the field to move the ball and to push the ball downfield.
Yeah, I like Cooper. Like I liked Cooper a lot in best ball coming in because I thought he was great last year relative to whatever QB play he had. But I think for Cooper, it just hasn't been there this year. Obviously, you could make the case for a lot of the Cleveland offense not fully gelling with the. It's going to happen when you have your QB going in and out, and you're down to your the fourth option you had at QB on the year. But I think in this spot, Njoku, I agree, and we said it last week, and as Matt mentioned, we did get it right. Flacco can get the ball outside. Flacco can feed Cooper outside. He can feed Moore downfield. He can feed guys in ways that DTR could not. And I think that's the main thing you will see for Njoku that makes it tough to follow him when he's chalk. But 10% ownership, I get it.
The other thing about Njoku, and I just have to call this out, I'm not expecting this to happen again. Harrison Bryant looked better than Njoku when he had the ball. Now, again, who knows if Harrison Bryant even gets any plays called for him today, but that's like at least in the back of my mind.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair way to look at it. Anything that does decrease the shot of Njoku having more routes, having the full crush of opportunity there makes it tough, even at 4,100. But there's just so many guys around him that I think definitely going to be tough to play in Njoku just because you could play a million different guys at the same price tag with a similar projection. Anybody we haven't talked about here, Hockenson, I think another tournament play for sure as a pivot point to Kittle. Hockenson at 6K, Kittle at 5,900, Laporta as well, 6,100, a live pivot point, I think, to Kittle. But anybody you want to kind of stand out here, again, it's a really flat week of tight end projections and ownership. So if you don't have anybody that really stands out, I think there's no shame in that.
No, if I could get to Isaiah Likely over Jordan and Conklin, I probably would, but they're very comparable. So if I were ranking them, it'd be Likely, Jordan, Conklin, but interchangeable there. So that's all I got for tight end.
And Juwan Johnson, I'll point out too, should consolidate some targets as well. Obviously, the opportunity has been tough with him with Taysom, but he was a red zone killer last year, getting a lot of opportunity. He does feel like he can maybe get a little bit more of that role, 3,300 against Carolina. So, it's certainly a spot that you're willing to attack. Defenses will hit on pretty quickly. It did feel like earlier in the week, definitely a consolidation on defense. And of course, the deeper dive coming up with Loughy and Ben in a moment here, live before a lot coming back for that, guys. So smash a like button if you can while we talk about the exciting portion of defenses here. Ravens D seem like they will be the highest exposed sim defense for me. It's come up though a little bit more where I'm getting a lot of Browns as well. 31% Browns, 31% Ravens. Are the Ravens the top defense for you in a spot where a lot of wind, very low total, very under average total for the Rams in the spot where they are heading east? I feel like the Ravens are an okay play, but I worry that they just kind of come in a little bit too easily with the projections.
Yeah, same. And the Rams offense, they're not an offense I'm scared to use a D against. Don't get me wrong. But they're also not an offense I'm like, okay, I need to target them. Right. Matthew Stafford at quarterback, they've looked good recently. So I like Baltimore's D, but not at that ownership for me in tournaments. Cleveland was my top D on the slate if Lawrence was not playing. with Lawrence playing, hard for me to like love them at 3K. I think they're too cheap. They're really good. They're at home and they're only 3K, but I'm never like excited about going against a quarterback like Lawrence, even if he is like compromised a little bit. So I like them, but they don't like stand out to me. I think the 1D that stands out if you can get there is San Fran, especially if it's Drew Lock at QB. They're the one team that has a ton of upside for me on paper. They're going to score. Seattle's going to need to throw. If it's Drew Lock, certainly propensity to throw interceptions. So they're expensive. I don't think they're a must. And then I do think Kansas City and Buffalo are both in play at those price points. You mentioned it, trending towards the under in this game. I think you can make cases for both.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I do think the Ravens and the Browns, like they are the best defenses on the slate. You know, the Browns, again, Matt can attest, like get a lot of pressure inside. They're able to do some really, havoc causing things, which for a banged up Trevor Lawrence with a high ankle sprain and, assuming he can even go the whole game, like you don't want an immobile QB against these Browns, I don't think. And in that spot, like I could see getting there. And the Ravens, it's a very low total, but I do worry about the Ravens. Like, Matthew Stafford is a pro quarterback who, if there's going to be pressure in his face, he's going to get rid of the ball. He's not going to take hits over and over. And he can't afford to take those hits. He just doesn't have the body composition at this point to do that. So if I were going to go away from the Ravens, I think the Browns are my favorite D, but I think it's really, every week is an agnostic week at defense, obviously, but in particular, I feel like this is even, again, the tight end agnostic, defense agnostic, but a lot of wide receivers and running backs to play.
Yeah, and honestly, I don't think the Jaguars are a bad play at 3,600, just because it doesn't look like there's one D that stands out here. Cleveland's D is going to get a lot of love. Give me the D facing Joe Flacco.
Yeah, no, I think that's certainly a fair way to look at it. And definitely defense going to be a week where you could follow whatever hunches you have for sure. But just know the fact that the Ravens will probably come up a lot nationally. They are well projected and they're reasonably priced as well. So that is a team that you're probably, if you are playing the Ravens, you are probably holding hands with a lot of the field. But as we've seen in the Sims, that sometimes doesn't matter that much. A defense being well projected and being a good play, you can just play them and not worry that much about it. But they're not going to be the thing that for the most part defines your slate. Anything else, Matt, that you want to hit on here? Of course, we're going to yield the floor to the deeper dive with Loughy and Ben coming up. Of course, live before lock with Matt and Eric after that. You can hang on here. Nothing, you need to change the channel to stay on this YouTube channel and keep watching everything. But I'll give the floor to you, Matt. If there's anything you want to plug or anything you want to say here as a final salvo.
No, I'm good. I missed the first half of what you said. Are we going to talk about QBs or no?
Oh, wait. Yeah, I guess we could. Well, we're out of time.
Okay, all I'll say about
give
QBs.
Me quick QB thoughts. Yeah.
I'll make it quick. The top three guys in ownership, Fields, Browning, and Purdy in reverse order, all make a ton of sense. I think those are the guys you're really looking at in cash games. In tournaments, I think both guys from the Kansas City game are intriguing. And then I'm going to call him out one more time. Zach Wilson, 4,700. That's just so cheap for a starting quarterback who can also run a little bit. Not likely to work out, but give me his upside in tournaments.
I'd play Flacco over Zach Wilson for the record.
Would you?
Yeah.
I talked about Flacco last week. He wasn't bad. I don't know. People in Cleveland are like hyped on Joe Flacco being here. I'm like, we thought this guy was dust for the Ravens 15 years ago. So I am not on Flacco this week. I hope he plays well, though. I hope you're right.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And I would say for you guys too, like obviously I'm boned up here and I'm spending too much time on defense and not on QBs. But usually with QBs for me, for the most part, like we talk about the wide receivers, talk about that. Obviously, that's where you should be going to determine QB play. I think doesn't work as well from the top down. So that's part of why I don't talk about it quite as much in these shows. But I think the plays you mentioned here, Brock Purdy is going to be the chalk. That's the main thing to know here. So if you're not playing Brock Purdy, you are getting a more tournament friendly approach because Purdy's going to be 15% owned. And I would guess, Matt, too, while we're talking about ownership, just very quickly, Jake Browning at 12.5%. I think he comes up a little bit more as well because people saw that Monday night game. They're going to think he's a new man. He's 5,200. I would think that Browning is probably like the highest owned cheap QB by a pretty decent margin.
Same. I think all the guys that are projected for like 8 to 4% ownership probably come in a little bit under owned, with the guys at the top pulling more ownership.
Yep, there you go. So that is going to be the First Look show. Deeper dive coming next with Loughy and Ben. Smash that like button before we go. Of course, follow me at Chris Spags. Follow Matt, doing great work all the time in NBA and NFL. Follow him at Fantasy Tips Matt. And hang on here for Loughy and Ben. Appreciate all you guys being here with us. Good luck in Week 14, guys. This is where a lot of the money is made in a lot of different formats out there. So I wish you guys the best luck this week especially. We'll see you guys again soon. Enjoy your weekends. Good luck. Bye.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Stochastic.com NFL Deeper Dive. Week 4. Can you believe it? Week 14. I mean, we're coming up on Christmas. By the way, Ben, I will be on that Christmas show with you. I figured some things out. That Christmas Eve show. We will
Christmas
be doing.
Eve. I was gonna say, I'm not going to be on any Christmas shows with you or anybody else.
No.
Okay.
Christmas Eve, however, that's
I'll
the
be
main
here.
slate. Falls on
Yes,
Christmas
sir.
Eve. Falls on Christmas Eve. So we got, but like we're pretty close to the, you know, we're close to these weird slate. Like Monday, you have a doubleheader. Both games start at the same time. Pretty sweet. You know, you're going to start seeing those Saturday games pop up, right? Sunday, Christmas Eve. Monday, I think there's 3 games on Christmas. So like we're nearing that point of the season where things get odd. And then week 18, I mean, it's hell on earth. I dread week 18.
Yeah, that's a bad one.
Where you and I sit here and do 15, because they'll probably have a Sunday night game if there's implications. Remember last year was Lions and Packers?
Yep.
But like it's possible we just have 16 games to talk about on a Sunday main slate come week 18.
Well, we're not going to worry about that right now. I don't want to think about that. That's
Don't
bad.
just brush me off, man.
You got me thinking a month and ahead till week 18 is like the preseason. It's not even about who to play. It's like mentality, who's playing, who's sitting. I don't.
You're right. It is like the preseason.
I know.
Which is the only part of it that's fun. It's actually, I actually love that, but it's going to take more time. Whatever. You're right. Let's back up, talk some week 14. Happy to have you guys with us. As always, it's the Deeper Dive. We've got 11 games to talk about. We'll be with you here for a little while. Turn it over to Live Before Lock. They'll take you all the way up to 1 Eastern. We're going to hit on the injuries. We'll hit on the weather, which it's funny, man, because when Ben and I did the First Look show, things are in flux, right? Like there's always things that can change, but usually it's not to the extent of like a lot of injuries and then the weather. And then guys that have high ankle sprains and look like their foot was about to get amputated, expected to play. There's some odd happenings going on right now. So buckle up. Happy you're here. And I ask one thing of all of you. Take 1 single second, atone for your sins here, and hit that thumbs up. It's Sunday morning, live from the sin bin. You guys just take 1 second. Single second, hover over that thumbs up. We're at 244. I think we crush 1,000 here. Now, here's what I'm going to do. And of course, subscribe to the channel. Make sure to check out all of our podcast content and podcast exclusive content as well. I'm going to throw this to you, Ben, and ask you, Rance said DFS church. Well, if you're not a church, Rance, then what is this, my brother? I'm going to ask you,
okay,
please, I beg of you, take a slightly different approach than you've taken the last couple of weeks with this.
I was gonna say that I think today is where we get to 3,000 likes. So maybe we're not jiving here.
Be more realistic.
No, okay.
800.
I was gonna say 750, 800. I think is very attainable. Something in that range. Yeah.
Okay.
It's cold. It's miserable weather. Everybody's tired. They got shit to do with the holidays. You know, I see it. This is not the Christmas shows. We'll get up there. I think 750-ish range. Yeah, that's fine.
You're officially back.
I'm not back. I never left. I took a shot. I missed, and now I've altered my projections here.
1,000. Let's start at 500. Can I get a 500? All right, let's talk some football. Glad you guys are here. If nothing else, should be a fun one for sure. Yeah, this is Mr. Shad. I said last show Wilson was recommended, so he held over on the left. Yeah, dude, that team. We'll get into it. I have a couple of, I think, relatively firm stands that I'm going to be taking today, Ben. We'll see if you and I kind of are in alignment on some of these. Maybe not. It is funny though. I just want to set the table before we jump into these games. We got about 2,000 people watching. Let them spill in a little bit more as they do on the Deeper Dive. And yeah, it's not cold here. Mark said it's not cold in Florida. It's 52 here. I took the dog for a walk this morning. Felt wonderful.
Yeah, it's not bad here. I mean, it's nasty here. It's like misting and it's kind of cold, but it's fine.
So, all right, check this out. Remember on Tuesday, I was like, yeah, man, I'd love Alvin Kamara if Derek Carr plays. Well, Now we're looking like Derek Carr is going to play and Taysom Hill is going to sit.
Yeah, here we go.
How much? I know we're not on this game yet. I'm just saying, like, because you and I talked about this throughout the week. How much does that change things today for you?
There's a lot of those things, and we're getting news on the fly. Not just the weather side of it, but some of the personnel that definitely shakes it up. I mean, New Orleans is one of the more potent teams. It's never been about their weapons, and we'll get there. But yes, that is very, very newsworthy. And Derek Carr, he's just banged up in a lot of ways, but apparently he's somehow good to go.
I want him to be banged up. Just give me that. Just dump him off, baby. Yeah, Chris Olave's got the flu. Rashid Shaheed's not expected to play. Taysom Hill's doubtful. Whatever. We'll talk about it. We'll kick it off, though, with Detroit and Chicago. All right, here's another one, guys. For those of you that hung out with us on Tuesday or even Thursday with Eric and myself, there were a lot of unknowns here. You and I talked about potentially looking towards this game, obviously ownership dependent in some respect, but when we talked Tuesday, this was expected to be bad weather, right? Like 20 plus mile per hour winds at Soldier Field, a lot of rain. Now I'm looking at it. It's cold, but whatever. It's cold and cloudy. And the wind is kind of like the standard 10, 11 or whatever miles per hour. That has changed. And if you don't believe me, this total in some spots has come up 3.5 points. Might not seem like a lot, but think of it this way. If you have 40 to 43.5, you're talking close to a 10% bump in the total, Ben, which is going to be reflected in the projections. My guess is when we run the sims with the updated projections that we will get more of this game than we did earlier in the week.
Yeah, I think that's more than fair. And you're going to hear, I'm going to get that out of the way right now. Basically, with every weather question, I'm going to say, I'm going to look at the Vegas total and react accordingly. That's my overall thought on that. I think trying to guess, and when you see a total go up, it certainly indicates that weather's probably not as severe as they thought. And this is a good game. I mean, Justin Fields and that maybe skinny stack with more. And then on the other side, I know Goff is not inside here, but at the same time, he's got every weapon imaginable. We saw your boy Laporta have a stupid game against New Orleans last week. It's a good game, and I think it's one people will get to, including me.
Do you think, though? All right, so are we talking both sides of this one? Because there's a lot of different ways you can go here. On one side, there's always the narrative of Jared Goff, right? Outside of the dome, or outside of warm weather, struggling. I think that's a little bit overblown. I don't anticipate him just being terrible. Plus, they have a ground game that is strong between Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. But I think I look less probably at stacking the Jared Goff side of this. Maybe I'm off, but I do like Amon-Ra St. Brown. I mean, the guy just any given week is a monster. Not to mention that when you're targeting him, he's like 80% to catch it. So that helps too. He's strong after the catch. He is used in the red zone. On the other side, Justin Fields and DJ Moore, I've mentioned it to you, I think earlier in the week. I mentioned it to Greg on Friday. If you took Justin or DJ Moore's 8 games that he's played with Justin Fields, got rid of the ones with Tyson Bagent, and just extrapolated that across 17 games, he'd be on pace for like 1,700 yards and 16 touchdowns. That's pretty amazing when you consider this guy's already eclipsed 1,000 yards in 12 total games, 8 of which he's played with Justin Fields.
Oh, yeah, there's no doubt about it. I tend to agree with you. If I was going to take a stack in this, just because Fields, for various reasons, certainly, of course, the rushing upside, we know that. Second, the stack, particularly if you're doing QB +2, it's going to be much cheaper on the Bears side, whether that's a Komet or I don't even know maybe Mooney, I guess. Regardless, if you're going Goff, St. Brown, Laporta, Gibbs, some type of combination like that, you're really allocating a lot of salary. I'm not saying it can't work, but I think the more prudent move is probably going to be skinny stack and then a run back of one of those top end Lions weapons. I think that's a pretty effective starting build today.
The only question I have for you is, let's say this is popular, because I think it could get relatively popular. Are there ways that you differentiate And is it really just within the lineup outside of this single, outside of the skinny stack and run back? Because there's still a lot you can do.
Yeah, I don't worry about it, to be honest. I don't think it's going to be, even if it gets a bump, it's not going to be something so crazy where it's such a unique price point that you're funneled into, oh, I'm going to be playing the same, 4K running back as everyone else, or the 3K wide receiver, or the 9K McCaffrey. Like, I don't see that at all. There's plenty of ways to be different, even if you do a very generic stack of this game.
Outside of St. Brown and Moore, do you have thoughts on the tight ends here, whether it be Cole Kmet, Sam Laporta? Like you said, Laporta coming off a great game. Cole Kmet, say what you want, but the guy does have 2 touchdown upside. We've seen it more than once with Justin Fields at the helm. Darnell Mooney's a tough one because I think there's other value that you can get to and feel a little bit better on this slate. But maybe in large fields, if you are just double stacking and you're getting St. Brown on the other side, Mooney might be a viable second piece. Just hope he catches a home run ball.
Yeah, I mean, again, the guy's talented. Kmet in particular can get some looks in the red zone. He's probably realistically, unless the Sims give me something I don't anticipate, going to be more of an attachment to Fields. I don't see him being a one-off tight end. Most likely, there's just some cheaper guys that I prefer. But yeah, if you told me that Kmet was someone that came up in those Bears stacks, it's hard to really push back.
Last question. What about the backfield? I think there's so many ways to talk about this game. I actually would have had interest in Roschon Johnson if Donta Foreman didn't play. We saw last week, despite Khalil Herbert being back for not his first, but his second game, which is notable, Roschon Johnson got the large majority of opportunities in that game, particularly in the passing game too. But now you've got the 3 in there. Foreman had been pretty effective. That's tough. And on the other side, you're trying to figure out David Montgomery or Jahmyr Gibbs, which is it going to be at a similar price point?
I think for the Bears backfield, it's a little too thin for me. We have value elsewhere at running back. So I'm not going to mess around with that. I think for Detroit, we know these guys are definitely capable of getting there in the mid 6s. It's 2 totally different worlds. We know Montgomery's probably gonna have to fall in the end zone twice to really tap into his ceiling. And I would say Gibbs is probably most likely tapping into his ceiling, certainly with target share. And best way to do that might be maybe as the connection to a field stack. Chicago gets up, Detroit's throwing, Goff drops back 35 times, and we see Gibbs get 8 targets, something like that. So I'm okay with it. Not my favorite mid-range running back. Certainly prefer a guy like Mixon, and we'll get to him in plenty more during this show. But I think in certain builds, you can allocate shares to either of them.
Okay. I prefer Montgomery a little bit.
That's fair.
Chicago's run defense actually hasn't been bad. The funny thing too is their secondary, they've gotten carved up, but they're one of the league leaders in interceptions this year, which is like, would you have believed that if I was just say, hey, where do you think they rank in interceptions this season?
Yeah, that is a little surprising, to be honest.
They're 3rd. But also, they played Josh Dobbs the other week and had 4 picks in a single game, right? That's like a team having no sacks and then facing Sam Howell or the New York Giants.
Yeah, the Giants.
And then everything changes. I can't get to anything from the backfield for Chicago, though. I have no interest in trying to figure out who that's going to be.
No, we're not starved for value. So I don't even know why you'd do that.
Nope. All right, let's talk about the Rams, unless you have anything else for that game.
No, I mean, there's I don't spend a lot of time on this. If you wanted to completely punt defense and you told me you wanted to go to the Bears, they're 2,400 cheapest defense on the slate, Goff outside. I get it.
Not a crazy idea.
Yeah, it's not crazy. That's all I'm saying.
Hey, 3rd most interceptions in the league.
That's what I mean. All it takes is 1 or 2 fluky plays.
Well, pick 6 action or something. That's all. That is all it takes. You could allow 28 points, but it wouldn't with a pick 6 or a scoop and scoop. What does it matter? It doesn't. We've seen that a million times. All right, Rams and Baltimore. So I actually teased the Ravens down here with Miami, 6.5 point teaser when it was at 7. So got it inside a point.
Nice.
Miami was 13, so got them at 6.5. That's not on the slate, but it's moved to 7.5. And we've seen Lamar Jackson. He is 18-1 straight up for his career against NFC opponents. It's pretty remarkable stuff. And you look against NFC opponents at home this year. You remember what they did to Baltimore? Or I'm sorry, to Detroit?
Yeah, full dismantling.
Remember what they did to Seattle?
Yeah, I remember all these games. You know why? Because I was
you're on the
way
wrong-
over on Lamar, and he got like 4 points because Gus Edwards was running the ball in. Guys I never even heard of. That was when Mitchell arrived. He just showed up, Shane Falco style at halftime, just carries it 60 times. So yeah, Baltimore's dismantling teams, particularly at home like this, very dangerous.
For sure. I do think, though, Lamar had a good game against Detroit, because I believe that was a 2-touchdown game from Andrews. It was Seattle where Lamar had like 11 fantasy points and they scored 38 in the first 3 quarters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was about right.
Yeah, there was a tough run there if anyone was playing Lamar Jackson, where like I always love to think of it like this. Say you just can't, like, you have prior obligations, you can't watch the game. You can't really pay attention, but then, 2:30, 3 o'clock rolls around, you pull your phone up, whatever app you use, and you look at the score because you've got Lamar skinny stacks or something, and you go, fuck yeah, they got 38 points. And then you look on DraftKings and he has 7.
Yeah, 7. Yeah, it's not good. But it's something you just kind of have to live with. If you're going to say, okay, this team's going to give me 4 or 5 touchdowns, you're taking that every time. It's just kind of the nature of it. And this could be another one of those games.
I have some interest in Isaiah Likely at his price point. He's cheap.
Yeah.
How much longer, for how many, just because those unlucky Lamar Jackson games happen doesn't mean that they're expected to happen again. So yeah, I have no issues with that whatsoever. He's cheap. Mark Andrews is out. As far as like the pecking order goes, I'm not particularly concerned about, Zay Flowers, sure, but Odell Beckham. I mean, how much stock are you putting into that? Plus, they don't throw to the running backs. The Rams have actually been diced up by opposing tight ends this year. They've been crushed. I'm not really a defense versus position guy, but I figured I'd throw it out there anyway. 6 touchdowns is the second most in the league. They've allowed, top 5 yards to the position. And he's going to be out there for probably 75% of the snaps. Probably my favorite play from the Ravens if you were to pair him with Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, that's a because Lamar, that he can get so many points independent. You can go skinny stack. I have no problem with that. I'm not sure I'm entertaining much else. Zay Flowers, he's in that perpetual mid-range. They get him the ball in a lot of different ways. It's not a volume thing. That's probably where it gets tricky. Like, he's definitely drawing to like 6 opportunities. And that's just very, very, very deadly unless you're running super efficient. So they're a team that they seem to get it done, and it doesn't always equate to fantasy point distribution in terms of consolidating to a couple of guys. But I still have some interest in Baltimore. You're never going to convince me to just cross off Lamar just because of what he possesses. I guess my question for you, do you have any interest on, we've seen the last couple weeks, Kyren Williams just 28, 22, like super amount of work. This is not an easy spot. Like, do you have interest in sticking with him? He's been popular and effective.
It's not an easy spot at all, but dude, McVay loves him. He loves him. And I don't think he's at this price point. I don't think he's going to be popular. Now, hold on. Let me preface this too with Kyren Williams, not one of my favorite plays today. Okay. But at no point, if I run the Sims and I get Kyren Williams in lineups, am I looking to like boost him down, negatively boost him or not play that lineup? The volume to me is enough to where he is. Does this mean that he's going to rip off a 30-point game again? Absolutely not. He is game script proof though, Ben. Like, unless this game gets out of control to the point where it no longer matters and it's Royce Freeman or whoever the hell is behind him, like they've done to punishing other NFC teams at home. But let's assume that the starters stay on the field. He came off the IR. He missed 4 weeks. There was 4 weeks in a bye and played 61% of snaps. Then he comes in the next week, plays 94% of snaps. Like, they shipped Cam Akers off, get rid of this guy. Kyren Williams is the man. And if this game's close, he's going to be on the field for the entirety of the game. So No issues with it at all. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, there's no argument to me that the volume, he's game script proof. It's an objectively bad matchup, and that's the risk you're taking. So it's always going to be that balance, and that's why, of course, I'm gonna lean on what our tools are giving us in terms of the projected ownership, how much potential leverage if I roll with a guy like that in a not so great matchup, knowing that even if they get crushed, it's going to have 20, 25 opportunities, barring something really, really confusing. And there's not much there. Well, when you look at the price point, Jonathan Taylor's hurt. ETN is banged up. White, Jacobs, Eckler, like there's not a lot of 7K plus or minus 500 backs that pique my interest. So he could be one of the guys in my pool. Definitely not my favorite either, but I thought it was worth mentioning.
He is worth mentioning because while the matchup on the ground stinks, if you're just looking at that through that lens, you're probably missing something. 2 weeks ago, he had 24 fantasy points through the air.
Oh, I remember.
Yeah. Like he had 41 total, but 24 of them were through the air. He is pretty frequently targeted. Tyler Higbee's not expected to play today. So who knows? Maybe a little bit more goes his way. Yes, like you said, he's not a priority, but I think you'd agree if you're getting to any Kyren Williams, you're not going to back out of that.
No, again, it will have to fit the build. I'd rather go get, Kamara McCaffreys of the world or punt with one of the value backs, but so would everybody else. And that's where there's always that balancing act.
6% owned right now. 6%.
That's what I mean.
Owned.
That's reasonable to consider.
Absolutely. Anybody else for the Rams or Ball? For me, this is kind of, I don't want to say cut and dry because that's just being lazy, but Cooper Kupp. How do you pay for Cooper Kupp right now? I simply can't do it.
It's tough. Great player, and you can always justify like I'm just going to blindly bet on his talent. But of course, with Nakua there, it's a different makeup of this offense, and I'm not sure how often the Cooper Kupp, even take the injury stuff, he's been banged up a lot, but like the Cooper Kupp 18 target games seem to be a thing of the past, and that obviously, of course, hurts. So not my favorite. I don't have Ram stacks. I'm not going to have Ram stacks.
Anybody else from Baltimore in the passing game?
No.
All right. And we're not touching these Baltimore running backs.
No.
Famous last words. Dude.
Every week.
It's happening.
Week.
It's going to happen. Likely he's going to get taken down at the 2 or the 1. And then it'll go straight to Gus Edwards.
It'll be Melvin Gordon. It's like, oh, he's inactive, but like he's just going out there, no pads, no problem.
No chance. Yeah. But interesting game though. 39.5 point total. Still an interesting game that I don't think you sleep on entirely.
No, not at all.
My favorite play is Lamar and Likely on that side. And then the only guy I'm really interested in would be Kyren Williams, and that's kind of tepid interest because of the low ownership.
Yep. Last thing, it's opposite of the Bears. If you have some money, the Ravens defense certainly could cause a lot of problems.
Yeah, no question. That's a good one. Seeing that.
Yeah. The Sims were heavy on the Ravens defense when I was running them this morning.
What are they priced at on DraftKings?
33. I think it's 33. It's
That's
in the
not
threes.
terrible. Mid-range.
Yeah, 33.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about Indy and Cincy. Old Jake Browning. Yeah. Before we do though, ownersbox.com, sponsor of the Deeper Dive. 20K to first today, the 100K kickoff. 33% filled, Ben. The $5 entry Hail Mary, 42% filled right now. High roller, 61% filled. We are 2.5 hours from lock, and one of them is a third of the way filled. I feel like I say this every single time we're on the show, but the prize pool has stayed the same over the last few weeks. 20K up top. Why not take advantage of it? $500 first, up to $500 first match deposit bonus. By the way, link is in the description and in chat. If you decide you want to sign up, plus you got plenty of time. You have still 2.5 hours to get your lineups in on DraftKings and FanDuel. Use this as a complimentary piece to your lineup building. Take advantage of the overlay. Links in the description and in the chat. If you have an ad blocker, turn it off because this link's weird with that. And you don't need a promo code, even if it asks. Just sign up to $500 first match deposit. You also get a free Lightning Lineups ticket, a free $5 contest ticket for DFS too. So even if you only deposited like $10, you're getting $10 worth of tickets right there. So like you're canceling it out. and you're getting the bonus, and you're getting the overlay, and it's a super flex format, which is very cool. I actually threw a lineup in earlier, Ben, that was Justin Fields, DJ Moore stack with a Brock Purdy, Brandon Ayuk as well. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Brock Purdy was in the super flex spot with Ayuk. So I had him and Ayuk and then Fields and DJ Moore. Oh, McCaffrey was in that lineup as well.
You can do that, or it's like college football for those of you that are lucky enough to play that. And we've seen, it's funny you were saying, go take advantage. I'll just say this: join everyone else who's already taking advantage, because we get a ton of screenshots and it's awesome all across the industry. We're getting more and more people with the logo saying, "I've been over at Owner's Box, making some decent money over there. Tried it out, just joined." And that's really cool to see, because we really believe it's an unsolved format. And to see some people using the tools and making some real money to the bankroll is very, very encouraging.
It is. Also, just a quick shout out to the NHL tools, the NHL team, because our boy Clayton Eskew, always hanging out with us.
Yeah, good guy.
Took down the NHL contest the other day. Took it down. Actually, matter of fact, finished first and second with 6 bullets in the $10. So shout out the NHL crew. Gotta love it, man. That's what I want to see. I want to see our guys taking down the contest on Owner's Box. If it's
I would hope so. Absolutely.
Link in the description and in chat if you're not there yet. 33% filled in that big one today. Other smaller stuff as well, mini max and all that other stuff. $500 first match deposit bonus plus the tickets. Get in while you can. All right, let's talk about this next game. So we've got the Colts and the Cincinnati Bengals. Jake Browning coming off a Monday night game. I honestly think if that wasn't a primetime football game where you had like Trevor Lawrence and all of that stuff, just across the board, that maybe Browning would be less popular than he is today. I honestly think so, because people, you saw the numbers, but people also saw him. And everyone that I've spoken to throughout the week, nobody said, yeah, those numbers look good. Everyone said Jake Browning looked good. I'm drawing a distinction there because they're watching him. If this were a 1 p.m. football game, Ben, a lot of people would have had no clue.
Happens all the time. Island games, they're overrated in terms of importance, both directions. And particularly one like that where they were everyone's, since it, and me included, like I like Jacksonville in that game actually. And Browning was outstanding. One thing I think we never doubted, we knew he had weapons. He has Chase, and when Higgins is there, he's there, and he's got Mixon. It's not a team devoid of options. We just didn't know what could he give us. And obviously he can more than manage the game. He can get it done. And now with a close competitive spread, a healthy total, this is going to be one of the more important games on the entire slate for both teams. I think this is a very key game that we have to talk about here.
It's a very key game. And well, let's actually start with Cincinnati since we got into Jake Browning, and then we can get over to Zach Moss and company. But this is another total that has come up considerably. I don't know if you saw it earlier in the week. I saw it sitting at 41 in most books. Now we're up to 44. And Bengals were, 1 point dogs? I think they're 2.5 point favorites now. What do you make of all that?
Yeah, I mean, again, you're seeing some of that stuff react to what we just saw, but I'm pretty damn comfortable with this Cincinnati side. I know I'm not going to be alone, no doubt about it. But I do like the Jake Browning stacks. Who's getting a lot of them in my first Sims runs. You can be creative. Certainly, you can put Mixon in there, and you've got Jamar Chase on the outside, who's going to be busy, no doubt about it. So I think that Cincinnati's the rightful favorite, and I think they're one of the best stacks on the board today.
I want to bet the Colts money line.
Oh, okay.
Like, it's just the crazy hype coming in on Browning after one game.
I do agree with that. I'm looking on OddsShopper right now just to see if there's any three. So 2.5 is across the board. There's no threes out there for you to grab.
That would be the case.
Yeah,
because it moved from -1 to +2.5. I'd be shocked if it hit 3.
That would be surprising.
Look, this is more so just if you bet on sports, you kind of like, it has one of those feels, right?
I get it.
like the Josh Dobbs, the Pastronaut came back down to earth, so to speak, Ben.
I see what you did there. Smart.
And everyone, even me included, like I was having fun with Josh Dobbs. It was fun. But then, my God, what a horrible display of football that was. And then you go, okay, maybe it makes sense that he's been a backup all these years. That might not be Jake Browning. All I'm saying is we're basing this off of one game.
No, we are. It just seems that, and I know that was a crazy game, but this is a better spot for him. He's at home. I think he has every opportunity to really have some success against the Colts. So I get why there's interest, and it's so easy to build with him. You're paying down at quarterback. You have easy stack options. You have Zach Moss on the other side or Pittman. It's not a hard build, and for that reason, it's going to be popular. But it also it makes sense.
So how are you playing it then?
So again, the beautiful thing about this is you do have options. You can go like Cincinnati Onslaught, no doubt about it. But the way I'm doing it really is I want Browning as the quarterback, stack up Cincinnati either with a +2, including Mixon, or go skinny with Chase, and then pick your run back, probably mostly one of the two main Colts players. I thought it was a little interesting. I couldn't have been more wrong about this. I think it's just a sign of the times of the industry. And you said this, you were all over this. Zach Moss was the most popular player of the year last week. He failed, I mean, again, he had opportunities and we'll talk about that. He is still projected to be the most popular play this week. People do not give up as easily, even with the price bump. So
Alvin Kamara now, by the way, we just got an update.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see. Where's Moss? I mean, he's got to be up there.
But yeah. Who? Moss?
Yeah. He's still got to be in the top. Yeah. We still have him projected for like 25%.
Yeah. And I think it's low, to be honest. The whole industry was kind of off on Moss last. I went into the Sims where you can bump ownership in the contest generator. It doesn't mean you're bumping the ownership for yourself to get. Not exposure. You're bumping what you think the ownership will be on Zach Moss, right? So like what you're bumping it so that's reflected in the contest generator. So, what the field, what's going to be in the field of content of lineups. I bumped it all the way and I still got just a ton of him. And it's fine. He was in the winning Millie Maker lineup. He still had 21 touches. He still had 8 looks inside the red zone. He led the league. I've said it a million times this week already. He played 94% of snaps. What more can you ask for? I mean, it ran bad. It was a tough matchup against Tennessee's run defense for sure. But you'd run that back at 4,600. I'll run it back at 5,900. I really don't have an issue with Zach Moss at all today. I like him. I like Michael Pittman. And hey, I might not be as high on these Cincinnati stacks as you, but Jake Browning's $5,200. So when you're coupling him with like a Jamar Chase, it really frees up salary in that sense. You're not playing a 7K Burrow. Obviously, that's a better stack, but no, I like Moss. I like Pittman. I'm perfectly fine too going with like a Jake Browning, Jamar Chase stack with just Moss as the run back. I don't care if it's not Pittman. Although if it's Pittman and not Moss, I'm perfectly fine with that too.
Absolutely. And yeah, I think one small distinction, and I know you're not saying this, but like with Browning, a lot of people are judging it like, can he keep that up? Well, he doesn't need to do that. If he does that, he's just the optimal quarterback, no questions asked. Like, can he give you 75% of that? Can he give you just a little of that? And I think we're getting where we need to go.
Absolutely. We saw Desmond Ridder with like 22 win the Millie.
Yeah.
We've seen quarterbacks that don't go insane win the Millie. Now, the rest of the slate has to comply, right?
Yep.
Like if you have a Brock Purdy game again, that's not going to do it for you. But it's a roll of the dice in that sense. But no, I still like Moss a lot. What would the reasons be for not going back to him today other than ownership? Because for what it's worth, like Javonte Williams should be popular. Mixon should be popular. McCaffrey, Kamara should be popular. Rashad White should be pretty popular. I anticipate Clyde Edwards-Helaire with Pacheco being out, being pretty popular. I still think Moss is going to be more than 25%. But I guess what I'm saying here is a lot of the running backs that we're identifying as good the field's pretty sharp. Most of them are going to be pretty popular.
Yeah, so that's always an interesting thing because it goes both directions. With ownership, you can only play, max 3 running backs. So there's going to be a cannibalization. Not everyone can be crazy popular. On the flip side, the opportunity cost to Zach Moss is gigantic. Any running back, it's gigantic. Like, he could have a very effective game and say Edwards-Helaire nukes and then McCaffrey and Kamara raw points it, you're boxed out possibly. Like, there are ways where more than 3 running backs, it's going to happen, have very effective games. So it's a big opportunity cost no matter who you click. I'm comfortable with Zach Moss. I prefer Pittman as the run back. I think most people prefer Pittman as the run back. I don't think there's anything wrong with either of those.
One of those slates, those rare slates where I think I'm perfectly fine getting 3 running backs in a lineup with one of them in flex.
Yeah, I think you're going to see a lot of that.
I think when we did the podcast exclusive on Tuesday, check it out, by the way, only in our podcast platforms like Apple Podcasts and Spotify. I think when we did that, one of the winning lineups, whether it was the Spy or the Reds, one of them, this fair catch, one of them had a 3 running back lineup.
Yeah, you see that. And again, it speaks to the depth of the position. Like, there are running backs all the way from 4 to 9 that we're going to talk about today. You don't always get that. So I think Zach Moss factors in. I'm not getting to any Colts stacks right now. They're more of a one-off team. I know last week we saw, and shout out to Eric, who mentioned Pierce a little bit during the week and whatnot. He exploded with 3 for 100 and a touchdown. I'm not really getting there. I'm sticking to the big 2 for the Colts.
All right, let's cap this game with this. If you're playing one lineup, say you're throwing one in the Spy, right?
Yep.
I think it's like 4,400 entries, $100 entry, 100K up top, like 20% the first payout, all that stuff. It's meaningful. And you're going, okay, this is the game I'm getting not primary exposure to, but like I'm stacking this.
Yep.
And you're hand building, right? How do you do it with your one lineup?
For me, it would be Browning, Mixon, Chase, and Pittman.
Okay.
It would be a pretty heavy stack. I leave 1 to 2 running back spots open because I think it's easier to pay down there. Obviously, I can allocate a punt wide receiver. I'm not filling tight end in this game. And I get Browning plus 2, consolidate all basically the Cincinnati touchdown equity for lack of outliers. Yep. And then I've got Pittman, who I think easily could see 10 to 15 targets. And you still have money. You're going to be okay if you do that. It's expensive, but it's not crazy.
But just to be clear, you're very okay with Browning Mixon stacks.
Yeah, I'm not sure I would just have QB plus 1 and it be Mixon. I think that's a little weird. But yeah, QB plus 2 with Mixon, sure.
Would you play Chase and Mixon without Browning, or is the main reason you're getting to this because of Browning's price point?
So because he's so cheap, realistically, if Chase really has a ceiling game, he drags Browning up almost to where he needs to be already.
Exactly.
I would rather play Pittman and Moss with no Minshew.
Yes. I get that. Yeah. Or even like a Mixon Moss game.
You could do that too. Twist the running backs.
Yeah, just no quarterbacks. But the whole game is good. That's why I'm asking, because I think you could still, even if you're not getting Browning stacks, could still have the Mixon Moss lineups or the Mixon Pittman lineups. But it sounds like to me, you don't really want to play Jamar Chase if it's not with Browning, because if Chase has a huge game, Browning is just too cheap to not kind of be tethered to that success.
For the most part, now you mentioned this and we'll get into it. Could that happen? And then the Saints have an extreme game and it's like, okay, well, Carr can mask the points for Browning. Yeah, that's possible, but it's less likely, of course. If Chase has 175 yards and 2 touchdowns on his own, that means Browning has 175 yards and 2 touchdowns to start.
It's a good point. Hey, 553 likes. What's that?
My YouTube didn't refresh. I was like, I've been stuck on 237 for like 45 minutes.
Okay, so wait, that's a YouTube thing. I thought it was just my computer that I needed to restart it or something. I just refreshed. We're at 553. So we're halfway there. I think 1,000 is more than realistic.
No, but 800 is 800's very realistic. It's going to be in between those.
I love this version of Ben so much more than the others, for sure. All right, in between.
Yeah.
So like an 860.
Yeah, 860, 912.
The people will punish you for this.
Maybe wouldn't be the
We'll
first
see that
time.
1K up there. Once I refresh it, once I remember to refresh this, it'll be there. Houston and the New York Jets. There are certain games that may take less time to discuss.
Yeah, this is one of them.
I actually last night bet Miami I bet next week's game. Miami minus 13.5. It's funny. I did that with Pittsburgh and New England under 35, closed at 30, and I still lost. But you'll take that value any day of the week. And I'm honestly surprised in week 15, Miami's not laying 14 plus. The Jets haven't covered since week 6. But forget about that for a second. Let's talk DFS. In the last 6 games, they have 3 offensive touchdowns. And now Zach Wilson is back under center. This is a bad, dysfunctional, completely broken offense in a game that in the second half could see some pretty bad weather. I mean, say what you want, man. I know you lean on the Vegas totals for these. Well, you're in luck. 32.5 points between Houston and the New York Jets. Also, did you see this game move from Houston -6 to Houston -3?
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm on the Jets in the game. I like the Jets.
Did you at least grab them at 6?
No, I missed it completely.
Should have watched my video.
I know. I do like the Jets in this spot, though. I think this is not clearly, but it's, look at the totals. This is an awful DFS game. I think you can make a case to just exit out. Are there playable guys? Sure. But I was looking at Odd Chopper to even not just the total for the game, but some of the player props, A, to put in some bets, but B, just to get a gauge, like, where is Stroud? I mean, I didn't want to get to Zach Wilson for obvious reasons, but like Stroud's passing prop, you're talking about low 200s in terms of passing yards. So this is not probably the Houston offense that we've seen for quite some time right now.
Man, that Tank Dell injury sucks, huh?
That was awful.
They do become a little bit more one-dimensional with Schultz out, with Tank Dell out, because you've got some good boundary corners, outside corners on this New York Jets team. I say it all the time with the Jets. It's like a war of attrition. The defense holds up until they don't, because they're on the field the whole game, right? And then you see some of these insane scores, they get blown out. But like Miami did that a few weeks ago in that weird Black Friday game, or what, like a week and a half ago, whatever it was, where it was like later in that game, they just ran away with it. I don't want anything from the Jets. I can't trust Breece Hall right now when there's value. I love him and Garrett Wilson. I love those guys. I hate to see them wasting away. Like, it really sucks. Those 2 guys are just wasting away week over week because Robert Saleh and ownership there decided that they were going to stick with Zach Wilson. And, being under the tutelage of Aaron Rodgers was going to turn him into a good quarterback again. It didn't. I don't love this game. I mean, the only question I have, really, because my assumption is that you're not going to the backfield now that Pierce is healthy for Houston. Are you going to have any pieces of the passing game for the Texans, just given how every week one of them is in a winning lineup?
No, I don't think so. Only because the price points, there are multiple pivots that I can make. I'm not saying I would, if I run Sims and I got a piece of Nico Collins or someone, would I say, okay, I need to manually override? No, I wouldn't. It's not to that level, but I'm not actively targeting. I hope I don't get any of them, to be honest. I don't like this game at all. I have the Jets defense. I think they're a fine play. It's going to be an ugly game. I think it's going to be really, really ugly and not produce much of anything.
Sub 3K Jets. I like it. How much is the Houston D?
Let's see. The
4K.
Houston, yeah, see, that's a no for me, dog.
Highest price defense on the slate. Crazy.
And it's counterintuitive. You would think like, well, horrible weather. That's true, but it might be so horrible that Zach Wilson throws the ball like 13 times, and that doesn't help anybody
at all. Yeah, right. Breece Hall just runs into the back of his offensive line 20 times.
That's useless.
It helps nobody. All right, Carolina and New Orleans. Well, Alvin Kamara is going to be popular, but you know what? It's hard not to like him in this spot. There's a couple things that could have broken his favor this week. One of them being Derek Carr over Jameis Winston, because Derek Carr is more than happy, actually giddy. He's eager to dump off the ball to Alvin Kamara. He has multiple 14 target games this year. But then Taysom Hill being doubtful to play. Keep an eye. We'll have inactives in like 40 minutes. But right now, Taysom Hill hasn't practiced, is not expected to play. Well, he's coming off a 13 carry game, Ben. Week before that, 7. Only 1 against Minnesota, but 11 against Chicago, 9 against Indy. This is a guy that is essentially split rushing attempts with Alvin Kamara. Now you've got Alvin Kamara with a guy in Derek Carr who either throws deep or dumps it off, one or the other, or gets sacked or gets picked, but you get the point. And now they don't have Taysom Hill. So I would expect Williams to get some more work on the ground, but Alvin Kamara, his rushing plus receiving prop in some spots is north of 105. Also, Carolina's allowed 17 rushing touchdowns to running backs this year. It lines up as a great spot. You just have to be willing to eat the chalk. I think I'm okay with it at home. I am in the dome.
I have no issues with it. Certainly, again, it seems like you're going to allocate some serious salary to running back today, and Kamara is a nice way to do it. Also, game script proof. He can get there by getting 10 plus targets. He could get there by scoring a couple of times. Bonuses are a little tough because he's in the Eckler where he gets like 60 and 60, and that doesn't do anything for you. But still, I'm very comfortable with him. I don't know what to do with the rest of this team, though. They're so banged up. It looks like this is the way I'm interpreting it. And feel free to disagree. I think Taysom Hill.
I disagree.
Okay. Well, then I'll let the mystery wash over what I was going to say. No, but I think Taysom Hill and Shaheed both don't play. And it seems like Juwan Johnson and Olave will play. Is that what you're kind of interpreting?
That is the expectation. Yeah.
That's what it seems like.
But what I also read was that Olave is not fully recovered from the flu.
Well, they'll give him the IVs and stuff because they need him out there. I just don't know what else to do with the car. Like
Jordan Klein from the clouds from Las Vegas, not even producing the show, just comes in for the band hammer.
Yeah, he was in Vegas watching a little hoops, I hope. I think New Orleans is a very interesting team, but to me, Kamara is almost play 1 and then it drops so severely to the next potential Saint.
This might sound crazy, but I only like Kamara right now from the Saints.
And maybe you have no interest in the car stack?
Maybe that's a blind spot. I'm really not.
Okay.
Derek Carr has been terrible. Look, I jumped on the car stack a few weeks ago, and it actually wasn't bad. I had some great lineups with the Derek Carr stack, but the problem is I didn't have Alvin Kamara in it as well. I had Shaheed, who crushed, right? I know you remember this game, right? Rashid Shaheed crushed. He had like 250-plus yard receptions and a touchdown. Kamara crushed, and he had a receiving touchdown. Derek Carr was pretty good, but then Olave didn't do much at all. I think he had like 12, and that hurt. So it can get there. I also think Carolina's pass defense is adequate, and their run defense has been utter dog shit.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen that. Obviously, there are some plays on the Carolina side that I have interest in too, but to get Carolina's defense out of the way, I do think they're getting better at times, but I'm not worried about New Orleans, particularly Kamara, having success.
For sure. No, look, I like Kamara a lot. Listen, I'm not out here saying that the Panthers are some juggernaut defense, right?
No.
But also, that's crazy. They've allowed the second fewest passing yards in the league this year. Ahead of only the Browns have allowed fewer passing yards than the Panthers.
Well, when teams are taking knees in the third quarter because they're up 40 points. But
why do I feel like all of these games, not all of them, but why do I feel like most of them have just been close and low scoring?
I mean, I think there's some truth to that, honestly.
Not all of them, but like 24-10, 2017, 21-13, 15-13, 16-13, 17-10, 21-18. Sure, they got smoked by Dallas, gave up 27 to Indy, a lot to Miami and Detroit. Oh, I'm just saying it's a weird team. Their offense is so terrible that you're right. Teams don't need to just air it out against them. I do think a huge weakness, though, is that run defense, particularly in the red zone.
Yeah. For as bad as they are, their defense is stronger than you would think.
Yes, and much stronger than their offense.
Yes.
How are you stacking? How about this then? How are you stacking Carr? Like, do you want Kamara in all of those stacks? Would you single stack with Kamara, or would you only put him in those stacks if you're double stacking Carr? It's a weird game.
I think more as a double stack. If I was going to single stack, I just wouldn't use Carr. I don't really see the point to that. Again, that's a pretty unique build. I'm not even sure I'm going to get to much Carr. I'm not ruling it out. It would be Kamara and then one of the pass catchers, or maybe you could get a little creative. And if we're going to need Olave, obviously, I mean, if he doesn't play, that changes all sorts of things. You're going to hear people talk about Perry, and we'll have to see. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of pay down options at wide receiver. So I'm not sure we're worried about value. It's really Kamara and then everything else for the Saints.
I want to backpedal on what I said for a second, a slight backpedal, not full, because it's not one of my favorite stacks. But the absence of Taysom Hill, I probably shouldn't underestimate how impactful that is.
It really is gigantic.
It's huge. So I want to take a step back and say, my fault. Now that I just think about that a little bit more, Derek Carr is a guy who there are games where he might play only 80% of snaps because of Taysom Hill. Now if assuming he's healthy, you're talking probably 100% of snaps or around that, unless they do some weird Saint shit, which is possible. That makes enough of the difference to say they're fine. It's fine.
Yeah, I agree. Again, it's definitely something I'm not ruling out. I want to be clear. I also don't think it's a plug and play, and no one's saying that. So Saints are in play. Kamara stands above the rest, and that's kind of where I'm drawing the line.
What are you doing with the Carolina Panthers?
So I'm certainly not going to stack them. I do want to give a shout out to Chuba Hubbard. He was awesome last week. I thought they should have given him a lot. He had 25 carries, and I thought he was underworked late in the game, which is crazy. But he crossed 100 yards against Tampa's defense. That's no easy task. I think the player I gravitate towards most for Carolina, though, is Mingo. 10 targets. He's 3,500. He seems to be getting better. Him and Bryce Young have something going on. Touchdown equity is low because it's Carolina, but Mingo's a good pay down option.
He is an option for sure. It's not fun. It's gross, actually.
No, it's not fun.
But he's there, getting a little bit more involved. Adam Thielen has been quiet. I thought last week could be, I said it, I thought last week Adam Thielen could have a bit of a resurgence. We have not seen that at all. We do have to talk about Atlanta and Tampa Bay, though. The Bucs are 2-point dogs on the road against Atlanta. Don't have to worry about weather here. 41-point total and no real injuries to speak of. We've talked about a lot of games already, like the Saints game. Injuries make a difference. Houston, a bunch of guys out. Indy, Cincinnati, clearly injuries there. A lot of these. This one, pretty clean slate across the board. I'm always willing to play Mike Evans. He's been dominant this season. I think you want to talk about understating how good somebody's been, particularly with Baker Mayfield under center. Mike Evans already has over 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns in 12 games. He's had some underwhelming games, but he's also had some real blow up spots, Ben. Like, 1, 2, 3, what does he have? 425 plus fantasy point games, a couple of them over 30. It's tough to say when that big game for Evans is coming, but when it comes down to him and Godwin, maybe whatever conversation we may have had prior to the season beginning, there's just not a question anymore that Mike Evans is Baker Mayfield's primary and favorite target.
Absolutely. No argument. It's a little disappointing. I'm a big Godwin fan. So it's more what happens, though. Evans seems to be week in and week out such a great one-off in the sense of, I haven't seen like Baker stacks flooding the leaderboard week after week. It's such a high concentration of his production going to one guy that Mike Evans has been better suited as just a high-end attachment to another stack. And I think that's kind of how I'm playing Tampa again. You've got him and you've got White, and you can kind of use them when you need to, and that's about it. I'm not getting to Baker stacks, and I'm fine with that.
Mike, did you run the Sims yet? Can you pull up Tampa exposure? I mean, my guess, Ben, is that it's going to be some Rashad White and then maybe around the field on Mike Evans. I don't know how much else I would expect to get, like maybe a little bit of Cade Otton.
Yeah, again, I think you're just talking about a handful of those type of guys to see, and it's no surprise that that's what's really gonna pop up for Tampa, and that's what I'm trying to mirror with my lineups. Evans, you already mentioned it. The guy's he's got 5 touchdowns in the last 4 games. He's got 43 targets in the last 4 games. Atlanta in the dome, I'm not worried about anything matchup wise. So it's all systems go for Tampa, but it doesn't change the fact that it seems to be one-offs that are dominating my interest.
I hear you. Atlanta's I'm having a tough time getting to Atlanta today.
Yeah, Atlanta just frustrates me.
You
Most
just have
frustrating
such a
team in the league.
visceral reaction whenever I mention this. It's tough, man. Like, yeah, I know Tampa's secondary has coughed up some big games to, Stroud. We saw that crazy shootout that saw 70+ points and all that. But at the same time, and this game's in a dome, sure. What are the expectations, though, for Pitts and London? Like, I suppose you could get to some Kyle Pitts. Drake London's tough because there's so many great mid-range wide receiver plays, upper mid-range receiver plays, in my opinion. A lot of the good cheap values actually coming from 5K, even some 4K running backs, some cheaper tight ends. It feels like a tough game to get to some of these guys and feel good about it. Maybe you see it differently.
No, I don't see it differently. I think that the one guy, and you're betting somewhat on talent, they're starting to understand, is Bijan. Now, it's an extremely deep running back pool. We already talked about the opportunity cost, but if you're going to tell me that I'm going to get 20+ opportunities and 25% of them are going to be targets, I will take Bijan in the mid-6s any day of the week. I believe in him. I believe in the talent. And we just saw it against New Orleans. Then they went on the road to play the Jets, and I know the Jets are a laughingstock, but it's not easy to play against the Jets, particularly on the road. And he had a pretty subdued game. I don't hold that against him at all. And so I'll go right back to Bijan. I'm comfortable with him.
Okay. By the way, we weren't getting Mike Evans. We were getting a little over the field on or on Rashad White, but yeah, that's about it. I was just about to run them for myself too, and see what type of lineups I'm getting. Now that we have the updated ownership, it's going to be really, really interesting to see how much Alvin Kamara pops up in that spot. Drake London, we're getting. It looks like we're actually getting a lot of Drake. Mike, is this 150 lineups? You see that exposure to London and Kyle Pitts?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be interested to see what pops up on my lineups after the show.
Do me a favor, Mike.
You got
Actually, wait a second. Because we're not getting a lot of Ritter.
Well, they
Go
could
to
be,
lineups. Go to lineups for a second. Now go to the right side where the stars are, or where the hearts are.
Mhm.
Above that, you'll see the 3 lines. Click down, click that, click filter, and then go Drake or just London, either one. But it's because I assume it's just a lot of them that doesn't have Ritter in it, Ben.
Yeah, but again, I'm not like overly surprised at that because Browning is masking all the pay down QBs.
You're right.
Like you can get to these one-offs and Ritter can have a good game and Browning or Carr can have a great game. And you just want the isolated piece of London or Pitts.
Yeah.
That's my guess, at least. That's what I'm reading into this. Even Russell Wilson or Dobbs, like these are all sub 6K options.
I may have to go back. I may have to recant what I said. I mean, it's ugly, but yeah, what 46 and 3,700 for Drake or for London and Pitts respectively. So really, it's basically just, hey, okay, here's a home favorite in a dome, some cheap guys as one-offs.
Yeah, I think that's more or less what's going on here.
It makes sense. All right, scares me, but it totally makes sense now that I look at how these lineups are structured. Okay. Anybody else here?
No, I think, we've talked about some of the main targets. Atlanta's a mystery. one other thing I'll just say is Bijan's a lot more popular than I hoped and anticipated. And that, again, just is another thing we need to consider.
Trevor Lawrence is expected to play. This is crazy.
That's absurd. Again, that's the NFL though. I'm surprised Tank Dell's not playing, because I tell you, you shatter a leg, you're like questionable. If you hurt your toe, career ender. You hurt your toe, forget it. It's over.
Lawrence is a warrior though. I mean, I feel like this is the third time it's happened this year where we see an injury, and then sometimes it'd be on a short week, like that Thursday night game where you go, wow, he's going to play, but there's no way he's mobile. And then he runs for 30 yards in the first quarter. He toughs it out. It really does. Interestingly, though, this line has only moved to 1.5 points. It did move off of 3, but it moved from 3 to 1.5, despite Lawrence now playing. The only other thought there is that it was a hedge line to begin with, and it was never actually fully representing Trevor Lawrence being out earlier in the week.
Yeah, I also think, it's not a concussion or something like that. Like, Trevor Lawrence can play and not be Trevor Lawrence. And I think the books clearly know, it's not, oh, he's good to go and there's no limitations.
But last time I thought he was going to play and not be Trevor Lawrence, he was amazing.
Yeah, that is true. But he's also in Cleveland today.
Yeah, and Cleveland defense in Cleveland has been really, really good.
You don't want to mess around with that. I certainly don't.
I will say there's one guy that I don't hate. I think Zay Jones is perfectly fine at 3,700 with no Christian Kirk.
Yeah, that was another all right, I'll play some show. Let me turn on. Oh, nice. Kirk, nice 20-yard catch, just immediately critically injured. That was terrible to say. But it does open it up. And I know the Parker Washington
minimum salary.
Yeah, I get it. I'm just not sure on this slate it's a necessity.
That grab was beautiful in the end zone.
It was player. I mean, but no doubt. There's other guys, Mingo is $500 more. Tillman in this very game is in the conversation. So I just look, I don't know. Maybe that's a little aggressive with some of these dudes, but we'll see what's going on with Cleveland's pass catchers. I agree with Zay Jones. What? Yeah, I know. That's why I'm starting to walk that back a little, but still.
You know what? I almost feel like I'd rather have either a Parker Washington or a Zay. Would you rather have a hobbled Trevor Lawrence against Cleveland or a healthy Bryce Young against anybody? It's an honest question.
Yeah, I mean, certainly we know that Trevor Lawrence can do it. It's just there's no chance, and I'm not saying you're saying this either. There's no chance that I'm playing Trevor Lawrence today.
No way. I'm talking about no. I was talking about your Mingo. You mentioned Mingo, and I'm saying like a Zay Jones or a Parker Washington, just the quarterbacks connected to him.
The thing I'm worried about, honestly, and it's a little counterintuitive, is that I think Jacksonville has a pretty good chance to just make this game ugly and stay in it. Whereas if the Panthers fall behind, Bryce Young could be ineffective, but he's just going to be throwing the ball all over the place. Jacksonville can lean on their own defense, lean on ETN, and not have to pepper any of these guys with crazy volume if it goes okay.
Possible. It is possible. We are getting a decent amount of Parker Washington now. It doesn't bother me. He's minimum salary, and he's going to play a lot.
No, I know. It's more that Zay Jones is not exactly expensive, So
I like Zay Jones a little bit more personally. He might play 100% of snaps in this game.
Yeah. So I would rather go to Zay Jones. I'd rather go to Mingo. Now, if you want to, there's going to be builds where it's like, I want McCaffrey and Kamara and my stat, around a stack, and I need that 3K punt, and I get it. I totally get it.
It's a bad game.
Yes.
It's an injured Trevor Lawrence, but I still think if he's out there, or maybe even if he isn't, if he's not out there, I don't think I want Parker. Like, I think I would go Zay Jones, but this is only because these guys are dirt cheap. That's it. But if Lawrence plays, I'm willing to take some punts, some stabs on those cheap options, but I'm not really interested in ETN here. Calvin Ridley, you'd kind of like him with Kirk out, but the matchup stinks and Lawrence is hobbled. Just give me the super cheap guys that if they don't hit, I'm not dead.
Yeah. Again, it's a totally different situation of what you need. So it's a bad game, not one that I have a ton of interest in. Maybe some receivers. You mentioned Zay Jones, Elijah Moore. I could do without the game though.
Well, I really liked Elijah Moore earlier in the week, but Amari Cooper cleared concussion protocol. I was really surprised by that. Assuming he's out there, it's going to be tough for me to get to a ton of Cleveland here.
It does change. Certainly, it actually, for me, impacts Njoku a little bit, who I was really thinking going to take a step forward, and he had seen crazy target share already, but now he's bopped down a little bit for me. He's still in the Komet conversation, those type of players, but Cleveland's getting a little trickier by the minute now that Amari looks like he's good.
Seattle, San Francisco.
This game.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, on OddsShopper, last time I looked, our highest EV play was actually Zay Jones over 29.5 receiving yards. It was on some smaller books, like I'm in PA. It's on like Sugar House and essentially Sugar House, Bet Rivers, Unibet. All of those generally have the same lines, but that was popping as our best bet. And it was second was Parker Washington over 18.5 receiving yards on those same books. You don't see that very often, where it looks like these books, like this provider, is just compared to the sharp sports books, because this is nothing more than a market-based approach, finding positive expected value plays compared to the sharp sports books and picking off the bad lines. It actually looks like the whole Jacksonville offense, in this sense, is mispriced on some of these books, because Evan Ingram's up there too with on reception totals.
Yeah, and I think that's really what it's drilling down to, is clearly they're not valuing probably the Lawrence piece correctly. And that's what these tools can do. I'm going to just make it quick because we were sweating out all sorts of things in the Discord yesterday. You should have been in there, from soccer to college basketball, FCS football. We have it all combined right now. If you want these type of tools, if you want some community, you want to talk process, you want to see kind of what other people are doing and how they're having success, come on in. We'll drop the link right into chat. Mike will do it for us, and see. It's a couple bucks a day. It is a blast. It's an awesome community. It's an awesome Discord. And more importantly, it's tools that can really take it to the next level.
Yeah, man. I think it's just worth being excited about this right now.
I am excited.
Well,
I really am.
The plus EV tools in and of themselves, like even if you want the expert picks in the Discord, which is great, a community of like-minded bettors, but being able to jump in, like especially for me with sports, like I bet tennis a lot now. I bet soccer a lot now. These are sports I know nothing about. I'm up quite a bit in tennis, just betting.
Tennis is wild, man. Don't even get me started on that.
But I'm just betting straight off the board of plus EV. I'm just sorting by EV or by OS rating and just betting them. You want to be on as many sports books as possible. That's the one thing here, because that's how you extract all of the value out of this tool. But if you're looking, if you sports bet, even if you're just casually doing it, I mean, anybody can do this. Anybody can do this. The learning curve is very small once you understand the process. So if you want to jump in, be sure to do so, man. It's just a really cool tool, fun process, awesome community, and we'd love to have you guys a part of it. I think you'll love it. Yeah,
last thing, and Manny in chat just said this. Sometimes it's better not to know about a sport when betting 100%, because you have no bias. You just trust way more rather than being like, oh, I can't. That guy sucks. I'm not going to bet him.
That's the biggest part, is understanding the differences between like, okay, I don't know statistically or from a research perspective if this is a good play, and then understanding like it's already built into the line and this is a bad line.
Yeah, no bias, because like some of these games, including the next one, this is going to be, I know it's the NFL and anything can happen, but like this is like you're drawing to a meteor hitting the field for Seattle to keep this close.
Let's talk about it. First of all, do you think Geno plays?
I don't.
They say it's a 1 to 2 week injury, but he's going to try. This line opened at 13.5, moved to 10.5, and then with the Geno news, moved back to 13.5. I don't know. I don't really have interest in anything for Seattle. Maybe that's wrong, I just have a real tough time liking Seattle today. And Kenneth Walker and Charbonnet are both expected to play.
Yeah, this is a no. You've got a guy in DK Metcalf that I got home from Thanksgiving and I sit down and I just say, okay, it's my time. DK, let's climb the board. And it was against San Francisco and he did absolutely nothing. Then he had 3 touchdowns against Dallas. We know that he can do it. It's just such a tough matchup. So DK Metcalf is always in play because he's an elite player. I got nothing else to say for Seattle though.
That acceleration was insane.
He's quite fast.
Holy shit, man. That was insane. On the San Francisco side, our top stacks tool, you don't see this very often on an 11-game slate. I really did not expect to see this when I looked at it this morning. By the way, all of our tools for stochastic too. You see our Sims tool, the contest generator, ownership, top stacks, premium Discord there, all of that for stochastic. If you want to get in for the week or the month, coming off a Millie Maker win, someone using the Sims tool just a few weeks ago, bunch of 100K wins as well. You want to get in, links down there in the description and in chat. And if you ever have questions, my DMs are always open on Twitter. And Greg did some awesome tutorials with Steve Buzzard on how to use these. I was shocked. San Francisco, the stack rating that we have, 41. The next closest is 26 and then 19. Just massive break, massive tier break there. And it's not like they're cheap either. The average salary on this stack is $7,100.
Yeah, they're in 2 things. One, I do want to say real quick, JSN is definitely playable. I prefer some of the other pay down options, but that's an oversight on my part. I think JSN's in the conversation for Seattle.
Okay.
Now to Purdy. They are honestly in a college football territory where when you play college football DFS, teams can score so many points that you can allocate such extreme amounts of salary to one team because there's so much production. And the Niners, I know they had their little lull, but it's pretty clear when they're healthy, it's an unstoppable rebel force. And Debo, I mean, he's my favorite player in the league, so I'm biased, but he's just unbelievable with what he can do with these touches. You've got every weapon imaginable, and I do get why the stack grades out so well, even though, yes, you are allocating crazy amounts of salary. If you go QB +2 or QB +3, then you need like 40, 50 points from the Niners probably.
McCaffrey, Debo, Ayuk, Kittle. Last week, all of the winning lineups had a common 2-man core. It wasn't McCaffrey. It wasn't Ayuk. It wasn't Kittle. It was Brock Purdy and Debo Samuel.
Yep.
Everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, Debo was unstoppable. Almost every time he touched the ball, he scored a touchdown.
I know. So where is the hierarchy come in for you this week? Because all of them are still capable of breaking a slate. Even George Kittle is capable of breaking a slate. We've seen it before. It's less likely. Dude, earlier in that game against the Eagles, it looked like it was going to be a George Kittle game.
That's the thing that it's not, it's a blessing and a curse of how they can do it. It was Debo last week. It could be Ayuk this week. It could be Kittle this week. So I think there's an element to mixing and matching. I treat Christian McCaffrey differently. He's the only one that I feel like week in and week out, his floor is secure, cash viable. You're just going to get, flirting with 100 yards. You're going to get your touchdown, and it's going to be pretty effective. So I treat Christian McCaffrey kind of as a different entity. He's so good, and I will try to make room for him. I actually think Kittle is a sneaky pay up at tight end this week, though. I'm going to try to make room for him, and I certainly don't mind getting some Purdy with these guys.
Don said Locke isn't chopped liver either. They won't win, but he can compile stats. Look, here's what Drew Lock is. You know this.
Pro Bowler, my man. I love Drew Lock.
Didn't what was our friend's name in chat? That was a huge Drew Lock guy. He used to be in here. It was like XX. Oh, come on. If Jordan's in chat, he'll remember.
Yeah, I know who you're talking. Roses?
Drop roses. Yeah.
COVID may have zapped my brain, but I still got a little.
Nice work. Here's the thing with the Emac said it too. What's up, Emac? By the way, check out all of Emac's free articles too.
Killing
They're
it.
fantastic. He's going to throw deep 70% of the time. Most of the time, it'll be nowhere near the pass catchers. Other times, it'll be caught by the other team. But he's going to throw deep like every chance he gets. That's Drew Lock in a nutshell.
Going to give you chances. Both teams. Like
both teams, yeah.
Both teams are going to have chances, and that's again, it's good and bad. But yeah, listen. The Niners, they can get there. And the other thing about the Niners, we've seen this with Miami as well. They can get there and no one can get there on like you don't need a run back. You can go onslaught and they can put up 45 and Seattle gets 6.
Do you have more interest now that do you have more interest in McCaffrey now that we've updated projections and ownership on Alvin Kamara and Taysom Hill's expected out and Carr's expected to play? Do you have more interest because Kamara's ownership should influence McCaffrey's, or do you have less interest because Kamara is $1,000 cheaper?
So what I think is fascinating right now is not currently 9 of the top 10 most popular plays are running backs.
Running backs, yep.
At
all different price ranges.
So it's just crazy what we're dealing with. And for that reason, I still think I have interest in McCaffrey. It's not like he's going to be sneaky. Far from it. He's going to be one of the most popular players on the slate. But somebody has to get squeezed. The pivots at running back today, if there's a random running back that explodes, you're going to see a very interesting dynamic ensue in some of these tournaments. So I'm very comfortable with McCaffrey. I have the money. I'm going to go get him and feel just fine about it.
All right. I want to move on from this, but this is always a really difficult team for me to figure out. Okay. The Niners. I don't think I'm on an island here, right? There's just so many weapons.
Right. Yeah.
Like go to the Sims tool and pull up our San Fran exposure. Because I sometimes still don't even know what it's going to look like. I assume we get a lot of McCaffrey, but okay, so a lot of Purdy. We're way over the field on Purdy. We're over the field on Ayuk. Is that positive leverage on every? Yeah, look, it's positive leverage.
What I mean.
And it makes sense because of our top stack tool. But look at that. We are over the field on all of them. Do one more thing for me, Mike. Go to lineups. The same thing we did with Ritter or with Drake London. Go to the right side and then just sort by Purdy. I'm curious to see this, Ben, because what do the Purdy lineups look like? QB +2, QB +2. And my guess is a lot of those +2s are Christian McCaffrey as well, right?
Yeah, I'm sure.
So
+3s up there as well.
Purdy.
None of that.
Go ahead.
But yeah, none of that's surprising to me at all. Purdy has so many weapons that could he consolidate? Sure. But QB +2 is definitely how I want to play Purdy.
You're going to love this one. Purdy, McCaffrey, Moss, Ayuk, London, Mingo, Kittle, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and Ravens defense.
Yeah, so that's mega mine onslaught, like QB +3.
Yeah, but it's possible.
Yeah.
Purdy, Rashad White, Joe Mixon, Keenan Allen, Debo, Guyton, Likely, Kittle, and Chiefs. That's another nice. By the way, these are very high simmed ROI lineups. These aren't just like pulling from the bottom. These are up there.
I get it. I totally get how those. I'm going to build some of. Again, I'm going to be running these sims in just a minute, but I'm going to be building lineups that look very similar to that.
Here's one that has your JSN run back with a Purdy +2, Ayuk and Kittle. Wow, that's a wild lineup. Travis Kelce in the flex. I don't know if you see that one, but it's
double pay up at tight end is always a really weird build. Not in a bad way, just in a leverage point.
For sure. Anything else in this game?
No.
Man, that's like super illuminating looking at some of those Purdy lineups, how well they kind of fit in with everything. Their total has to be north of 30, right?
Their team total, yeah, I would. I mean, they're They are by far the team most likely to just absolutely crush today. I think that's pretty obvious.
It is 30 exactly.
Yeah.
So there you go. Minnesota and Las Vegas. Justin Jefferson's back. Josh Dobbs, we all remember what happened with Josh Dobbs. How could you forget? But now you're in a situation where, like, is TJ Hawkinson priced for Justin Jefferson's return? Is Justin Jefferson priced appropriately for Justin Jefferson's return after being on the IR for so long? Raiders aren't a particularly good team, but they're at home. I was a little surprised they were 3-point dogs here. Maybe I see it wrong, but I don't totally buy into this Vikings team. I don't have much Minnesota right now, and I don't feel terrible about that.
I don't really either, but it's an interesting game in the sense I know this, and this happens sometimes. I like the game more than I like the players in the game. And it's just a price point thing. Like I do agree. We got our man with the best super chat etiquette around. Goody, very generous, said, please explain the over-under on this game, feeling like it goes way over and makes for a great stack at super low ownership. I agree with that. I am having trouble building lineups with these price ranges. It's not nosebleeds, but like, what do I do with Jefferson? I'm not super into Josh Jacobs here with the depth at running back. So what does that really leave me? You've got Devontae Adams, sure. But am I really looking to stack up the Raiders? Not really. I guess you could go Dobbs, but Dobbs with no Jefferson, or are you paying up for Jefferson? I'm struggling with this game in terms of the personnel, but I agree it's a sneaky environment.
We had a couple of people ask if we could pull the Sims up for FanDuel. Mike, can you run that on 10,000 and just like 25% payout?
Yeah, you got it.
Thanks. T. Willis, FanDuel tournament. Thanks for the super chats, Goody and Willis. FanDuel tournament, Purdy and Ayuk or Fields and Chase. I have DJ Moore and Debo. Wait, I have DJ Moore, Debo, and Kittle regardless. Well, then I think you got to go with you don't have to, but because
I'd go with Fields.
You'd go Fields skinny with a Debo and Kittle. So 2 receivers, no Purdy on the other side.
I'm fine with that. I think it's not that you can't. We just talked about Purdy +3. I think that's totally fine. I just really like Chase and Moore, and Fields is such a wild card because he could get like 40 and Purdy could have 6 touchdowns and you still want Fields.
Right. Man, fitting those guys in. Fields, Chase, Moore, Debo.
Yeah, that seems illegal. I don't know if he's tapped into like 75,000 salaries, but more power to you, my man. That's fantastic.
Yeah, that's pretty sweet. All right. No, okay, look, I don't really see this as that sneaky of a shootout. If it is, then I'll be in trouble. It's still Aiden O'Connell and Josh Dobbs.
Yeah, it's more, these aren't exactly defenses that I'm super worried about either. Middle of the road. I'm looking at passing yards allowed per attempt. Both teams pretty average. Rushing yards allowed per attempt, kind of the same story. Minnesota's a little stout against the run. Vegas is just Vegas. I'm just not too worried about it. But again, what does that lead me to? Like, am I going to play a Minnesota back on this slate? Absolutely not. Am I going to go get like Hawkinson? You can do that, certainly. But again, with Jefferson, who knows? So there's just a lot of mystery around this game.
Absolutely. Sean said on a scale 1 to 10, how bad is the weather? 10 being great, 1 being brutal. You got to flip that though. It's got to be 1 being great and 10 being brutal, right? Like you know what I'm saying? So I'm going to flip it because my brain's going to get messed up otherwise. It seems like a 3 to me, Ben.
Yeah, 3 is the answer. That's what I was going to say.
Tyler, how do we feel about a DJ Moore and Laporta run back and a Purdy stack? So it wouldn't be a run back. It'd just be like a secondary stack. I have no issues with that at all.
Yeah,
I know you don't either.
No, definitely not.
3K receivers, asked Scott. Well, look, Parker Washington's out there. Zay Jones is around that. Mingo's around that. There's no real shortage. There's no real shortage of those guys. They're not going to make you feel good, but they're not horrible. All right, Buffalo and Kansas City. Let's go. I want to start with Kansas City, and then I'll throw this over to you. I don't know. So we have McKinnon at 4% ownership right now. I think I probably manually boost McKinnon. I really do. If Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who's expected to start with Isaiah Pacheco out, is going to be close to 20%, and he should be at that price point. You know, this team offensively has struggled so much from a drop passes perspective. They don't have much outside of Kelsey, and Rashee Rice has been pretty good. Jerick McKinnon is still impactful in the passing game if you need him. We saw it in the postseason. We saw it at times last year. Pacheco's run like 250 routes this year. He's off the field. Dude, 4.5% McKinnon to me at that price. Maybe he should be a little bit cheaper. I can't help but be intrigued by that. It's still Mahomes. It's still Kansas City. It's still a 48.5 total game. McKinnon is the one spot here that could get me into trouble, but I want to be over the field a little bit on Jerick McKinnon today, especially if most of the field, large majority, is going to Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Yeah, I mean, you just don't know. Kansas City, it's a fluid situation. I honestly think you won't know because it's dependent on what happens early in the game. Like if McKinnon gets going and they fall behind, maybe, sure. Edwards-Helaire is a pay down back that has to be at least considered. And then you've still got probably Rice and Kelsey mostly that you're going to be sticking to on a full slate. So Kansas City normally is, always talked about. I feel like they are a little lost here because of that. I mean, Mahomes is going to be sub 10%. It's not the stack that grades out the best, but they still command our attention. And it's at home in them in Buffalo in a game that both teams desperately need. Buffalo actually has to have it.
They do. Trip, no, the player compare tool is not off the site. I just went to it right now. It's free, by the way. So if you guys have those 1v1 questions and stuff, 2v2 questions, you can just plug the names of the guys in. Like if it was Hurts versus Allen, not even on the same, I'm just throwing that out there because they're the first names to pop up. You'll see everything like optimal percentage, boom percentage, ownership projection, and then the head-to-head, you'll see the percentage. Like here, Hurts 55% to Allen 45. But no, I'm looking at it right now. You just drop under tools, player compare, free, go down to NFL. So if you ever didn't want to super chat or you don't have a lot of time or you don't have time to watch a show and you need a quick 1v1, 2v2, it's free on the site, 100% free. Anyway, so then where do you land on the backfield? I'm gonna put the metaphorical gun to your head.
I'm in line more with the field than you. I prefer Edwards-Helaire, but I totally get. I have some McKinnon. I have a little of both, and that's it. Because I think this is not useful, but it's the truth. All three things could happen. Edwards-Helaire could have a big game and consolidate. McKinnon could have a big game and consolidate. Or nobody could have a big game and they just say, we're not going to use any back. Everyone gets 6 touches, including guys we've never heard of.
That is true.
That's just how they operate. I don't think there's anything more to say on that, truly.
I'll say one last thing. McKinnon might do nothing, but we have seen him do it before. I know Eric Bieniemy is no longer there, but we have seen McKinnon have those big games. And now with Pacheco out, maybe there's an entry point there. We'll see. How are you approaching these Kansas City stacks?
And, McKinnon, Kelsey, and Rice are the only guys that I have interest in.
But I'm saying, like, are you super interested in this, in the Mahomes, Kelsey, Rice stack? Because it is expensive.
Not really. I think you can do better with one-offs. The other thing, it's like, even if you do that, there's still the question of, like, would you rather just have the quarterback on the other side? I mean, Josh Allen is doing everything and then some. He's running all over the place, putting up monster games. So I definitely have some lineups that I'm entertaining that have 2 Chiefs, but it has Josh Allen, and it's just double run backs.
Wow. Okay.
Now, I don't know if I can make that work, but I am trying to.
What about like a Kelsey, Clyde Edwards-Helaire with no Mahomes?
Yeah, that again, I think that's definitely doable.
I think that's very viable.
Yeah,
for sure. What are you doing with Buffalo?
So same story. I mean, you've got Josh Allen, who makes a ton of sense. He's got his alpha in Diggs. Gabe Davis, I know rarely does it like you want to chase a guy like that. He did have 12 targets though, and I think he could be in line for another big game. He's sub 6K. I have no issues with just going to Gabe Davis. I want nothing to do with the backfield. I don't know what's the deal. We'll have to see what's up with Knox. I don't think I'm going to get to Kincaid. I'd rather have Kittle. I'd rather have Hawkinson.
All right. Wally, thanks for the super chat, my friend. Yeah, I don't love Buffalo today, but if I'm doing it, I think I'd probably just go with an Allen stack, actually.
With
Like,
Diggs?
Yeah, or Gabe. I think I would just play for this to be one of those crazy high scoring games. Kansas City has a good defense, but I think I would just go for it to go nuts. And that rushing upside for Josh Allen any given week is huge. I have no problem with a single stack. My assumption is that Diggs isn't going to be that popular, right?
No, he can't be.
No, 4% right now. He's super expensive. That's like, dude, honestly, on paper, in a vacuum, you could say, do I like Stephon Diggs at that price? No, not really. Do I prefer Keenan Allen? Do I prefer Amon-Ra St. Brown? Yeah. 3.9% ownership is wild, Ben.
Yeah, I'm going to try to force some of that in.
That's crazy. I mean, it is still an almost 50-point total game. That's all I'm saying.
I hear you.
Yeah. And also, but you know what the problem is? Before we close it out with this last game, flip the page. You got Eric and Matt Gajewski coming up next, so don't go anywhere, taking you all the way up to lock. It's difficult. Mahomes, Kelsey, say Rice with the Diggs run back. I'm not saying it's not doable, but I mean, there's very little room for error in a lineup like that, right?
Yeah, I mean, you're just playing it though for just that you need the game to get out of control.
Yeah, you need the 34-30 game.
Yeah, just like this just has to be one of those games. You're not going to get there in a standard game.
Do you have a favorite bet for today?
Yeah, the Jets.
It is? Okay, you say that definitively.
Yeah,
I like them
because it
too.
is.
All right. I can dig it.
I mean, I will say I'll give people just a little alpha because we had a great group here. I know not everyone's in Discord. My real favorite bet is St. Joe's in basketball. I love that spot today. If you're betting some college hoops. Yeah, drop that in Discord. Put it on our expert picks right on OddsShopper. Again, I trust tools. I always recommend people go into the tools, learn market-based approach. There's nothing wrong with taking some sides here and there, and St. Joe's is in a good spot today.
Fuck, man, you were right. 804 likes. Not hitting 1,000. We have one
game. You don't listen to me.
Well, we got almost 4,000 people.
It doesn't work like that. People, it's not that simple. And we got the best people. We love the sport. It's appreciated, but it's just not that simple.
I thought we had the best people.
Wow. So yeah,
we do. Look, nobody is a bigger champion of our viewers than myself. I still think we get to it. I think there's 196 people out there that just forgot. It's Sunday morning, might be a little hungover. They just forgot. Here's the subtle reminder, and they're about to shoot this well north of 1K. I'm thanking you guys in advance for this. Goody, $1 million question. Another perfectly timed, solid etiquette tweet, super chat. Which Broncos and Chargers teams show up today? Wait, which Broncos and Chargers teams show up today? What do you mean?
I know what you mean. It's just like they're both Jekyll and Hyde.
Which version? Which version of that?
Yep.
Oh, who knows, dude? Who the hell knows?
Yeah, they don't even know.
You look, the Broncos had a shot at winning that game last week in Houston against the Texans. Okay, they did. Russ Wilson got picked off in the end zone to close that game out. The Broncos, up until that, had won 5 straight. Look at the scores of these games. 22-17. They lost by 5. They could have won. 29-12, then 21-20, 24-22, 24-9, 19-7, 8-19. You know what you're getting with the Broncos, guys. Like, sure. Can we see something kind of stray from what we're typically used to seeing? Of course. But I'm just not convinced that this is a high-powered enough offense to get it done. I think Javonte Williams is fine. Sutton is fine, but I'll say the same as I said last week. I don't really want to get to must Russell Wilson.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's not impossible. Just the volume makes it tough. Williams, I think he's fine, but he's competing with so many backs, Mixon and certainly Moss for those shares. I don't have a lot to say on Denver. If I got a little piece of them here and there, sure. It's a healthy total. Obviously, there's no weather. Still not a great team, though. They just don't want to play at that pace. And I know the Chargers are the Chargers, and they could drag them up a little bit. I still think more often than not, you're not getting a ton of volume.
All right. Well,
like he's throwing the ball 20, 26, 22, 35, 29, 19, 29, 22. Like, it's hard to get there in those type of things. It just really
I don't want to
is.
do it. I don't want to do it. For me, it's basically Javonte Williams. And even that I don't love right now. I don't love quite frankly, I don't love much from Denver. This game to me comes down to Keenan Allen. I even have a tough time wanting any Austin Eckler at this point. Like, did you see the report that Josh Kelly and Isaiah Spiller are both expected to get work?
It's just not we talked about that a little on the Tuesday show. It's just not a spot I'm looking to mess around with. So I do kind of like the Chargers in the game, but at the same time, I'm not sure it's the best DFS game.
Give me, just to close this out, your overall lay of the land here for this week 14 slate before we go.
I mean, I think it really comes down to, you've got a couple of different decision points. A, do you want to pay down a quarterback? And is that Browning? Or is it Purdy? Or do you want to go up to the extremes of Allen and Mahomes? B, you have a running back at every price point, multiple options. Are you going to take two? Or are you going to take three? Or are you going to take a pivot in there? And then my final point is, there are multiple top end wide receivers, elite players that are not getting as much buzz as you would think, just because of the product of the slate. Guys like Diggs, guys like even Jefferson, St. Brown, even Keenan Allen to an extent. You're not going to have room for them if you go Pepper, McCaffrey, and Kamara. So that's the opportunity cost for the slate. If you can figure that out, and depending on what the Sims run, that is what I'm hoping to accomplish today. I think it's a fascinating slate. One of my favorites so far this year.
Yeah, I'm going to hit the Sims immediately after we get done this show.
So am I.
1,000 likes. 1,000. You guys, see, I knew it.
I only have 554 on my screen, so.
Well, you have to refresh. I knew
I'm not going to. I'm just going to cash my ticket.
3,800 people in here. I knew the people would come through. For me, I'm leaning into Kamara here. It's not to say that I don't like Christian McCaffrey quite a bit. Those San Francisco stacks, they obviously look really good. Kansas City, if you're doing it, you have to be willing to punt a lot. I don't know how much of that is going to come down to going with some super cheap Justin Watson or Sky Moore bullshit plays just because you have to, and you hope that they come along for the ride. It is one way to do it, though. And you know what? The hill that I may die on is that Chicago and Detroit game, and hope that my field single stacks with the St. Brown or Laporta run backs get me there.
Last thing for me, I know, but we're going a little long here. I just want to mention, with so many questions still, when these inactives come out, we get more clarity. Obviously, that's going to consolidate, and our guys that lie before lock have you covered. But don't forget about the betting angles of that. Odd Chopper, see how the market reacts. Even if you're not placing the bets, use it as a guide for DFS to say, okay, this prop has now dropped a lot. And again, the link is below. Odd Chopper Premium. People were asking, where do you get the Discord? It's included. It's all together now. So just hit that link. Come on in for the week, couple bucks a day, and use it as a DFS reference point. And if you're in a state where you can make some of those wagers, or you're playing on Prize Picks, things like that, come on in. The water is warm. So we'll see you in there.
Oh yeah, man. I will go place some bets immediately. I will say they perform very well when you're betting them close to lock.
Yes, we've seen that. Our data says that.
Hey, good luck, guys. Appreciate you. Really do. We can't do this without you. Great show today. Good luck. Hit us with those screenshots rocking the stochastic avatar after you take it down. Follow Ben at JazzRaz DFS, me at Laffy_D. Shout out to Mike Lawrence for producing this one. We'll see you back here for the next one. Peace. We are back for another edition, a huge edition of the Stochastic Hall of Fame, coming at you hot, fresh off $1 million winner for one of our subs. And man, that is awesome. All you got to do to get involved. Now, he might not need a free sub anytime soon, but you want to get a free sub, $200 value, whether it's NBA, Sims package, everything, NFL, everything, up to $200 for the month. All you got to do, and to get inducted right here in the Stochastic Hall of Fame every single week, download the Stochastic profile picture at stochastic.com/avatar and tweet your wins to us at Stochastic HOF. You finish top 3 in a field of 5,000 or more, got a free month. Any Stochastic package you want, up to $200. And of course, induction right here in the Hall of Fame. Let's get started. First up, Short Gamer TV. Wow. Or What a Sunday. Wow. Shout out to the Stochastic team and the Sims. Couldn't have done it without them. 1 million. Short Gamer TV took down the Millie yesterday. Obviously a very sharp dude, but utilizing the Stochastic tools, the Sims, all of it comes full circle. It's a beautiful thing. Shout out to Short Gamer TV. That has to be the greatest feeling in the world. $1 million win to kick off the week. Peter Hanley's back on the board. What's up, Peter? Got to get that free month and get to play a lot of NFL tomorrow. $13,000. Look at that three-way chop in the NBA Showdown fadeaway, followed by Maxwell Miller. Got second in the 65K NFL Spike on FanDuel yesterday. Thanks to all of you for helping me become a better DFS player. $3,000 win, second place for Maxwell. And Michael Yamada, multiple mini-mag. I love seeing these because remember, doesn't matter if you're entering 25-cent, 5-cent contest. Doesn't matter what you win. As long as you finish top 3 in a field of 5,000 or more, no matter the contest, you're in. Free month and up here. Minimax takedowns on DraftKings and a three-way chop for first on Owner's Box. We've been seeing a lot of Owner's Box wins pop up lately. Thankful for the NBA Sims tool as well as the amazing content. Shout out to Michael for 4 takedowns there. Braden, think I'm finally figuring out how to get the word out, Stochastic. Finished second in the Minimax last Sunday at Owner's Box. Again, the tools, especially the Sims, are making a big difference for me this year. Congrats, Braden. And Michael Phillips, Stinger 22, $3,000 win. Sims tool already paying dividends. You love to see it. How about Kevin Cutler? Biggest win so far for me. Thanks to Stochastic and the usual suspects. Haven't even started working with the Sims yet either. Watch out. Let's see that name in lights again. $5,000 for Kevin Cutler yesterday. We keep going. Big ones this week. Brett Shoup, little late posting this one. Another hit due to the awesome Live Before Lock videos. The data is real, my friends. $5K for Brett as well. And Mike Marks, Stochastic Hall of Fame, 3 fire emojis, $250. Second place in the 5K Mini Max with Sean Geezy following up 2 in a row. Second out of 36K entries in the 15K Mini. Shout out to the crew as always. And then he had another one. He's up here a lot. Sean's up here a lot. Another Mini Max win. Shout out to Stochastic crew for the best tools in the game. $500 takedown there. We go to AJJ or AJE 245, one or the other. Just shouting out the guys at Stochastic again. Best tools and best knowledge in the game. It's helped me become a better DFS player. $300 second in the 7.5K Mini Max for AJ. With Johnsy, how about this? Took down the Warriors versus Nuggets showdown, $15 slate. Thank you, Stochastic, for the tips. First place out of 11,700 entries. Some chops there, but we're throwing it up anyway because that's a nice $1,700 win. And we round this one out with Trappist Monk. Thanks to Stochastic for the great show on Saturday featuring the sharp NHL minds of Slim Cliffy and Josh. Their insight and advice helped me build some nice.
That seems good. That seems like a good idea.
You are Eric,
But
he is Matt, and I am Mike.
we are ready. What is going on, everybody? Welcome to NFL Live. Can't even talk right off the bat. NFL Live Before Lock presented by Owner's Box. I'm Eric Lindquist. You can follow me at Eric Lindquist over on Twitter /X/ whatever Elon calls it these days. I'm with my buddy. Looks like a young Jeremy Renner here. I don't know where I'm going. You look beautiful. That's all I'm going to say. Matt Gajewski, Matt_Gajewski on the Twitter /X/ whatever Elon's calling it these days. How you doing, my dude?
Doing good. Excited for the slate today. Was a weird week for me. Obviously, there was no college football outside of the Army-Navy game, so a little extra time to prep and look at things. So, I'm feeling good. We'll probably end up losing it all, but we're in a good spot today. How are you?
What? Okay, negative Nancy. Can we get rid of that?
You,
right
you know
before we
how
go?
it is.
Yeah.
At least, I mean, you lose most slates playing like large field tournaments, but
You
some of the
do?
time you come in and you have what you think are these hot spot on takes. And those are the weeks where, sometimes it doesn't go your way. That's where I'm at.
As a Vikings fan, I am very familiar that football does not go your way a lot of the time. Every year, my entire life, everything sucks. But you know what doesn't suck? Being able to finish in the top 3 of a tournament with 5,000 or more entries, because then you'll get yourself 1 month of Stochastic. You can get the Sims package that you prefer, whatever it is that you want. I can prefer the Sims Max because that's up to a $200 value that you're getting here at Stochastic. Again, download the avatar, finish in the top 3 of any tournament of 5,000 or more contestants. Get yourself onto that HOF by tweeting your wins to Stochastic HOF, and then get that free Stochastic package. Really cool stuff. And yes, Mike Lawrence doing an amazing job there behind the scenes as Jordan Klein gallivants and asked me for recommendations in Vegas. But my dude, I hooked you up. I told you the places to go and things are good in your life. But Mike Lawrence, good to see him bright-eyed, bushy-tailed here this morning. No birds. No birds, that's for sure.
Oh, bird.
I can't. Anywho, let's begin the show. We have actives and actives, lots of things to pay attention to, but I think by far the most important one, going to be no. Taysom Hill, is it Alvin Kamara unleashed today? Matt Gajewski.
Yeah, probably. That was one we were expecting, though, from last night. So, as far as inactives that actually changed what I was doing, the only ones that really mattered to me were Dearness Johnson being active. That does matter for Travis Etienne. Juwan Johnson being active for the Saints, so that's kind of right in line with your Taysom Hill take. And Noah Brown being active for Houston. Otherwise, I think everything else, we basically had the news ahead of time. We had the Lawrence news. I was anticipating Flacco starting. Dawson Knox, we had that. So not too much change, but I do think looking at ETN, you can dock him a little bit with Dearness being back. And then obviously the Juwan news goes right in line with Taysom.
Yes, it does. Let's begin the program, my friends. We go position by position here. But first, smash that like button. We're already over 1,000 likes. Get a head start. Check out Owner's Box. Check out everything that we have going with them because, again, up to $250 you can get for a first match deposit bonus. Fire that link into chat as well, Mike Lawrence. It's just such a cool product, and there's massive overlay every single Sunday. There is again this Sunday. Let's fire up some lineups over there. Maybe talk a couple of plays that I'm going to be firing up over there for sure. But we begin primarily talking here on DraftKings with some expensive quarterbacks. And it's an interesting slate because the chalk, I mean, I wouldn't have been able to guess it even on Thursday doing the show with Loughy, where we would be landing here on Sunday, seeing some massive steam up. But there is one game environment in Buffalo and KC. Not a ton of ownership coming in on the Allen Mahomes side compared to what I was expecting. Days of yore, the Buffalo KC Gabriel Davis game in the AFC Championship. Many shootouts between these two teams. Kind of struggling, I would say, both of them. Obviously, KC's still 8-4, but have lost a couple of games that were very attainable for them. And then Buffalo, that applies in spades. But are you getting to either expensive quarterback on these slate or on this specific late? What am I talking about? On this slate, there we go.
Yeah, a little bit, but some of the problems you mentioned just come from pricing. I don't really know what DraftKings is doing, but it doesn't really help public fans, like people that are just coming in for a lineup here or there. Like when you're clicking together your lineup, having to land on Jake Browning or Jonathan Mingo or Michael Mayer, I mean, it's not really great for your product, but that's where we're at. And because of that, it's hard to play Josh Allen. Pat Mahomes is a little bit better, but anyone in the expensive range, immediately when you play them, you're playing someone completely dusty in your lineup that's looking terrible. And when you try to stack these players, they're extremely expensive. On the Buffalo side, you can use Diggs, and then you allocate like 1/3 of your salary to 2 players. The rest of your lineup probably looks pretty bad. Or you go down and you play a guy you're really uncomfortable with. Dawson Knox being back hurts the value in Khalil Shakir, probably even hurts Kincaid a little bit. Gabe Davis does nothing to begin with, so he's not really a consideration for me. And then on the Chiefs side, you can play Kelsey, who's been pretty bad this year compared to his historic run, I guess. And then outside of Rashee Rice, who else do you stack Mahomes with? So, I mean, the entire stacks do not project well. I am going to play a little bit of them, just because, I mean, that is a game with the highest total and it could shoot out. There's a lot of problems with it, so it's not going to be anything I'm overexposed to. How are you treating it?
It is really hard for me not to have exposure to the second most likely stack there. San Francisco, 15.2% top stack percentage. There are a lot of pieces you want to get from the San Francisco side of things. Kansas City sitting at second at 11%. Buffalo, fourth, 9.3%. Smack dab between them, the Chargers. I mean, this is a game environment that 20% of the time, so a fifth of the time, you're getting one of these two teams to go completely ballistic and probably getting a run back or something of that nature along with it. Now, what's fun about KC is, as you said before, like, it is going to be Rashee Rice. Like, that is going to be your double, I think. He is continuing.
Like, when has that ever been the case this year?
But I'm saying that he's started to see a snap increase in like every single game. And so I'm saying it hasn't been the case until this week.
He still hasn't even hit 70% of the routes in a single game.
I know, but it's coming. There's no way that Andy Reid is... Really? You don't think that's going to happen?
Dude, I mean, I'm not Andy Reid. I don't know. All I'm saying is assuming
you're not
it's
Andy
going to
Reid.
happen
I didn't know that.
Is a pretty bold assumption.
I'm not saying that
two weeks ago, we were all rostering Justin Watson, and he's now $600 more than he was that week. And everyone thought he was the wide receiver one. And now 2 weeks later, we've completely tilted this a different direction. Dude, I wouldn't be surprised if like Kadarius Toney led this team in receiving.
Don't you say that. Don't you ever say that. No.
I mean, I don't think that's likely. All I'm saying is there's a lot of uncertainty with KC, always.
Rashee Rice, 68% of the snaps week 12, 69% of the snaps, nice, week 13, 29% of the targets last week, 32% the week before. I mean, he is good. The other thing, too, his ADOT is completely repulsive, 4.75 on the season, but like he is so elusive. And the nice thing about a guy like Rashee Rice, I mean, playing closer to the line of scrimmage, you remember like the Jamison Crowder years with the Jets where you're just looking at a guy that you know, there's going to be some volume coming his way sooner rather than later, and I'm not going to be late on it. And again, we're already starting to see it ramp up the last couple weeks, but it has that kind of a feel to it where they have been begging for somebody to have any rapport with Patrick Mahomes in this kind of capacity, or, not drop a football like Marquez Valdes-Scantling, but that's a conversation for a different
day. Rice has done that too.
I know. Well, he's also ultra talented and can actually run a route, whereas MVS just go that way, go that way. And then that's like the extent of his skill set.
The other problem you have running into Rice is he's going to be 30% owned, roughly. So it's like you're walking right into ownership too, which is okay. I'm not saying don't do it because of ownership. You definitely can do it. You need to be careful elsewhere. But 1/3 of the field is going to have him.
This is true. Well, I just wanted to start with that game environment. It's in the afternoon window. Kansas City going up against Buffalo. Quarterbacks have just absolutely torched them all season long. They are third worst in the NFL against that position. So giving up the third most fantasy points at that position. So that's always nifty. And then Josh Allen, 5% Josh Allen always seems like a lot of fun. Just throwing it out there. But Lamar Jackson, 7,700. Whether it's kind of a thing out here on the East a little bit. CJ Stroud, definitely weather, definitely difficult spot. Wild to see zero ownership going his direction, but I think it's warranted considering the total in that game. 17.5 point. What is that implied team total that we're looking at in the Jets? Number 1 in the NFL against the quarterback position from a fantasy perspective. Herbert, Fields. Well, actually, we'll keep Fields out of it here for now. But any of these other 7K quarterbacks you're landing on for your lineups?
Yeah, this is a range I think is pretty good, especially for leverage. Lamar, we have around 5%. Love that. Not really concerned with the weather. It honestly doesn't look very bad. We have light rain and low winds throughout. I mean, we're talking like 15 miles an hour, which is certainly not in the anything you should be scared of category. And I don't even know if it matters that much for Lamar. He does a lot of his damage on the ground. If they run more, you'd think he has something to do with that. So Lamar, I think, is relatively unaffected. The total hasn't really been affected in that game. Stroud's an X out for me. That game does have significant weather concerns. It's like 25 mile an hour sustained winds. The Jets already had a good defense facing Stroud. And I don't really know if the Jets are going to push Houston on the other side. So shootout seems extremely unlikely, which Stroud needs at that price tag. Herbert is a player I like a lot in large field. Small field, I'm not really going to get there. But for large field contests, he's really easy to stack. you want to go expensive, you have Keenan Allen. And then unlike the Bills and the Chiefs, you do have really cheap guys that are viable. Quentin Johnson and Jalen Guyton are basically the only other guys running routes. No interest in the tight ends. They split that almost 50-50. But man, like you're getting a really cheap stack with this Justin Herbert. And I mean, this is probably one of the better game environments overall. I don't love Russell Wilson, but LA's defense has been non-existent. So this does have a lot of shootout potential as far as quarterbacks in this range go. But yeah, it's going to be mostly Lamar. And then I like Herbert specifically for large field.
Yeah, I like Herbert a lot for large field today too. Looking at my allocation, it's just somebody that with Keenan Allen and the volume going in there. And now, do we get to just say rip Austin Eckler to some extent? Obviously, the report comes out, rushing attempts going to be split. Maybe you see some passing game involvement, but we haven't seen any passing game involvement relative to last season because Keenan Allen's hamstring hasn't been torn yet, which is just fantastic stuff because Keenan Allen, when healthy, is really, really good. He's obviously battled some injuries, specifically that hamstring the last couple of years. And I think that's probably helped out Austin Eckler in the receiving volume quite a bit. But when he stays healthy out there, man, it's all going to one guy. And I'm throwing in some Guyton with it. I don't know if I have the brass balls to click on Quentin Johnston because I like money and I'd rather not go Horned Frogs. Woo. But just saying it's it's going to be a lot of Justin Herbert for large field as I'm looking through my lineups. But this leads me into Justin Fields, where I am blown away that he has gotten steamed up to 10, 11%. I suppose shouldn't be all that surprising because 23 or more points in 4 consecutive here for the Detroit defense. Points are available. The weather has drastically improved in Chicago. And now he's everybody's cash game quarterback, which freaks me out because then we see that inflated ownership where it's like, oh, this is the most comfortable play on the board. I loved getting to him and DJ Moore on Thursday. I'm not sure I love it so much anymore. What are you planning to do with the most popular quarterback play on the slate now?
Yeah, he's not really still that popular. Nobody's outsized in terms of ownership at the QB position.
Mm-hmm.
So I still don't really have any problems playing him. Like the difference between your most owned quarterback and like your 6th is like a couple percentage points. So I think it's still pretty easy to play him. Obviously, a lot more faith in a guy like Justin Fields for small field stuff where you're more comfortable eating the ownership, but multiple ways to get there. Detroit's defense has been awful. They're really bad over the top. We saw this game play just a few weeks ago where the Bears had no problem scoring points. He's very easy to stack. You can do it at all different price points. That's a tight end option you can use for Fields. I love Mooney as a buy low and a pivot off some of the cheaper chalk. So I actually really like Fields. I have no issues playing him in small or large field stuff.
I want to bang my head against a wall every time I think about how much I've rostered Darnell Mooney this season, specifically in Showdown. It's like one time. Can you get there one time in a game where there's only 2 teams to pick from? Like, how many times can you play Darnell Mooney and be disappointed? So I'm obviously going to play him on the main slate too because I hate money, apparently.
I feel bad because I'm sure they play it on prime time. So you've watched those games, I'm assuming, and you've seen probably there's like these clips on Twitter. It's like a montage of Darnell Mooney, non-highlights, but they're kind of highlights because he's streaking down the field wide open. And you're like, why isn't the ball going to Darnell Mooney? There's no one in the vicinity of this player. And then Fields, for whatever reason, doesn't throw him the ball or the ball's uncatchable. And it is the most frustrating thing I've ever seen. But all the underlying stuff for Mooney is good, and I'm sure we'll talk about him when we get to receiver pivots. But anyway, in relation to Fields, I like that you can stack him and you can do so cheaper, not just because of him, but he does have pass catchers at all the price points that are pretty attractive.
Yeah, well, somebody who has expensive price point at every position that he is surrounded by. How are we feeling about Brock Purdy? I misspoke before, obviously. Justin Fields is somebody that I'm looking at for like cash game builds because I'm actually playing cash today. I think it's a very clear-cut build in a way where, yeah, there's a million running backs you want to play, but I feel like there's like one right way to go about it this week. So I am going to be playing it, and I am going to have Justin Fields as my cash game quarterback, but in large field and probably rightfully so at 6,500, Brock Purdy, he has all of the tools. He has all of the weapons. He has all of the ability to just get a guy like Deebo Samuel the ball 4 yards from the line of scrimmage and let him run that way with it. So I really like Deebo, Ayuk, McCaffrey, Kittle everybody that everybody likes every single week. They should just absolutely decimate Seattle, who's probably going to be playing without Geno Smith. Late swap, everybody. Late swap. Waiting on confirmation for Walker Charbonnet, seeing how that backfield ends up looking, because DJ Dallas could be very, very sneaky in passing game involvement if they're down by infinity points. Just throwing it out there. But Brock Purdy, yes or no today?
Yeah, in large field, he's going to be my most owned quarterback, not by a significant margin, because ownership's pretty flat at this position and you're not really gaining much leverage. But the stack with him is still not very expensive. It's like significantly cheaper than stacking Allen to Diggs or Mahomes to Kelsey or something like that. Purdy's still pretty valuable in terms of his salary. He comes up as a value for us. And then I think sometimes the options paralyze people with Purdy. It's difficult to decipher between Debo, Ayuk, Kittle, and even McCaffrey in these stacks. So sometimes for that reason, I think he goes a little under-owned. And I don't really care which one you use. Today, I think Ayuk is the most under-owned of the three, and McCaffrey is arguably the best running back play in the slate. So I'll be a little overexposed to Ayuk with Purdy. But if you want to get to Debo off the big game last week, which is, he had a crazy game and he had like 4 air yards, or getting to Kittle at a weak tight end position, I have no issues with any of them. For me personally, it'll be mostly Purdy to Ayuk, though.
Red 19, the best number on a roulette wheel, the best number in the NFL. Debo Samuel, my favorite player to watch in the NFL, bar none. He is just outrageous, and I would do anything on planet Earth to have him play for the Vikings. That will never happen. I don't even know I'm bringing it up. I'm just going to get sad. So there's that. Let's move ourselves, though, to the sub 6K plays, and we have a ton of super chats actually to catch up on, so I'm going to fly through this one a little bit. I have some Josh Dobbs in my life. Can't believe the ownership that started to show up for him. Russell Wilson, 5,800 up against the Chargers. Obviously a decent enough game environment, 21 implied team total for them. And then Cortland Sutton catches a touchdown pass every freaking Sunday, so that seems good. Lots of pieces down here in the sub 5K range, but Jake Browning, I will not be playing Jake Browning this week. So if anybody else wants to chase and enjoy Jake Browning, who I believe Matt Gajewski said last week wasn't even the top, wasn't even a top half quarterback at the Pac-12 or once upon a time coming out of the Pac-12, talking about the difference between Browning and your boy Tommy DeVito. Hey, great stuff from Tommy DeVito. Showing you wrong, right? Anyway, Jake Browning, not for me. Anybody else down here that you're going to be clicking on? I think that's about it from me.
Yeah, I don't know how talented Jake Browning is as a player, but I also don't really know how talented you have to be throwing to Jamar Chase,
That's
T.
great
Higgins,
point.
Tyler Boyd against Indy, who's probably a bottom 5 secondary in the NFL. And it's a price thing with Browning. I don't like him as a player, but if you want to play McCaffrey and you want to play Keenan Allen and you want to play good players at other positions, you have to make a sacrifice somewhere. If you're running 150, I don't think he's really like a player you can avoid at some extent. I think you need shares of him because you're probably going to be playing Jamar Chase. Maybe you're playing some T. You're probably playing someone in Indianapolis with a full portfolio. Like, where do you get away from him at 5,200? And what does he actually have to do to pay off this salary? To me, it's not very much. So you can make this argument, honestly, for a lot of guys in this range. So I'm not sure he's, like significantly less talented than O'Connell or Ritter, honestly, like Mayfield and these other players too. So yeah, I don't think he's a great player, but I don't really think any of them in this range are. So it's tough. DraftKings forced us into this, and because of that, I will be playing some Browning.
I would have played some Beathard, but that didn't end up happening because apparently Trevor Lawrence is the bionic man. So that's cool.
I think he's just like, he's never missed a game. So I think there's a lot of pride in there with him.
So weird. Does he go out and take a snap and then just leave the game? Like,
dude,
what was the running back who did that?
That's live against Cleveland.
Well, I'm saying there's an Arizona running back that did that last year or 2 years ago, where he came out for one snap, took the snap, and then just disappeared into the abyss, and somebody else's backup just went completely ballistic. But we're not going to talk about that. No use in crying over spilled milk, that's for sure. Lots of super chats. We will catch up on those. We will talk about some other goodness as we head to the running back position, because, oh my gosh, do I have some running back plays, as does the field, it would appear. But Thomas G, 499. How are your plays / stacks generally looking with areas from Cleveland? Too much of the East Coast seeing heavy rain. I'm avoiding them entirely. Let's talk through this a little bit. There are 2 major weather spots that exist on today's slate: Houston and the Jets. You got the Rams and Baltimore. Those are 4 teams that I am very trepidatious with, besides their defense, of course, playing a ton of them. But those are the 4 teams that I think are the most risky in terms of like what you're looking at. Detroit, Chicago, weather's improved all week. Jacksonville, Cleveland, really improved all week, although there is rain surrounding the area, it sounds like, and I think that's what you're alluding to. And then Indy, Cincinnati as well has improved drastically. So I think I'm just going to be really, really cautious about anything that I'm doing. I do have some Brevin Jordan. I do have some Tyler Conklin. Looks like I'm getting to a couple of pieces. Isaiah, like, looks like a lot of tight ends that I'm playing from these spots and like nothing else. So hopefully that helps you. Anything you want to add in terms of weather on today's slate, Matt?
Our projections account for this. If you're using our projections and you want to make any additional adjustments, you're double counting.
There you go. Let's go. Matt Gajewski coming in with the fire take because, again, the man does college football projections all the time, and there is some weather up there in old November in Michigan and shit like that. But Jay Blake, the King, $20. Hey, guys, love the show. Well, we love getting $20 from you. Could I get a breakdown on Javonte Williams? We will definitely spend some time here with Javonte Williams here at the running back position. We'll spend $20 worth, in fact. Really appreciate the super chat. And then Ace of Spades, $2 DK tiers. Thanks, Eric. I will pull that up here and talk you through that as we head over to the running back position. But anything else you want to talk about from quarterback, Matt, before we continue?
Yeah, I'll just highlight a few players I'm also using in this Jake Browning range. Again, I'm not overexposed to Jake Browning by any means because it's pretty flat. But I do have stacks of his counterpart, Gardner Minshew.
Okay.
He's really underowned, and there's actually a decent amount of people playing Downs and Pittman. So you want to get some leverage and play some chalky Indy receivers. Throw Gardner Minshew on the end of that. He's not owned. I have a lot of interest in Baker Mayfield against Atlanta. I don't understand why he's coming in so underowned comparatively to Browning. He's only 100 more. The game environment's probably a little better. But honestly, Mayfield, he's very easy to stack. No one ever clicks Mike Evans. And the last one I'm playing is his counterpart, Ritter. You need a very specific situation for Ritter to hit. Basically, Tampa Bay has to score immediately, and you'd love it if Atlanta played with a deficit the whole game. If the opposite occurs, your lineup's probably dead. So I have 4% of Ritter in my 150 set. That is for large fields specifically.
Yeah, Baker Mayfield, definitely somebody that I have exposure to as well. Rip having Jameis Winston on this slate, that would have been so damn fun against Carolina. Alas, I'm going to have a little bit of Derek Carr, is what it is, but I'm really going to have Alvin Kamara. We will continue over here to the running back position, and we will start actually, because it was a $20 super chat, with Javonte Williams here on this slate. We've talked about him a ton because, well, it just feels like we're waiting for him to get the entire backfield at some point, and it just doesn't happen. He did have 16 opportunities against Houston last week in the loss of a quote-unquote better spot, higher implied team total here with 21 in LA, but I'm still not going to get to him relative to some of the strength and some of the guarantees I get with other pieces of the backfields, like the Joe Mixons, the Zach Mosses, the Christian McCaffreys, the Alvin Kamaras. I know they're going to be playing 80+% of snaps or 70% of snaps or more, barring injury. Javonte Williams, I don't have that kind of a guarantee, and he's got 20.6% ownership coming in on him. How do you feel about Javonte Williams against the Chargers today?
I think it's going to be a little under 20%, but anything like in the 15 to 20%, I think is too high because you're basically betting on efficiency, which it's a reasonable bet against LA. They have a terrible defense and they've been horrendous against the run, but this isn't the first matchup Javonte's had like this. And a bet on efficiency with Javonte is pretty tough. He has one run of 18+ yards all season. And it's not for lack of opportunity. He's supposed to be their back of the future. They've been trying to give him opportunity. He just hasn't been efficient with it. I don't know if it's the injury. I mean, it is pretty tough for guys to come back from multi-ligament knee tears in 1 year, which is what he's facing. But yeah, I mean, at this point, I don't think Denver can even justify trying to give him more work because he's been so bad. You're getting more efficient snaps out of McLaughlin, and we'll see what Pirine can give him today off the injury report. But I mean, yeah, Javonte, I think, is pretty dicey given the alternatives.
It's a very, very dicey situation. I like Javonte Williams. I loved watching him with his counterpart, Michael Carter, at UNC back in the day. That was great college football times, that's for sure. It was kind of a headache from time to time, as you can probably recall, but I was playing a lot of college DFS at that point in time. Haven't played a lot since, not much time, but that is the Matt Gajewski streets. He makes people money all the time there, and I try to tail whenever I can, but Saturdays are usually not for the boys. They're for my wife and dog, so I don't get divorced. Those are good things. We will get to the top of the running back position here in terms of popularity, and I will talk through DK tiers for my guy, Ace of Spades. I'm paying attention to all the things, but Kamara versus McCaffrey. These are not really guys that you would say, oh, versus, but it's really hard to fit a lot of both into them, considering we have some really nice running back plays in the mid-range this week. Do you have a preference between the two? Because I have a strong preference between the two.
I prefer McCaffrey.
Okay.
They're coming in with like almost the same ownership. There's 1,000 separating them, but I think you still have less worry with McCaffrey. Like there's other players that carry the ball on New Orleans. Would you be surprised if Jamal Williams handled 30% of the carries randomly in a game? I certainly wouldn't be. That's not happening in San Francisco unless the blowout is just severe. Eli Mitchell's not playing in this game. So if the game's even relatively competitive, what are they going to give Jordan Mason like carries in a game script where they need production? Absolutely not. It'll be McCaffrey for me, but Kamara's a really good play. This is just like force me to pick one of them.
Mm-hmm.
It would be McCaffrey, but I don't want to slight Kamara. He's also set up in a good spot. While I think the risk is slightly higher with him, I still don't think there's much risk. Like Jamal Williams, at the end of the day, probably is going to handle more like 15% of the touches, maybe 10%. And without Taysom Hill in the lineup, you'd have like a lot more touchdown expectation because while Hill doesn't play a lot, he comes in like really high leverage situations, which are really impactful for fantasy. So now like your touchdown expectations higher, pass game usage should be better for Kamara. They're probably the two best running back plays, at least two of the best three on the slate for a reason. So yeah, if you force me to pick, it'd be McCaffrey, but really close.
Alvin Kamara, anytime touchdown, -140. This is like click on it and move on with your life. Feels pretty darn good. I think Olave is now extremely interesting here at wide receiver as well, because he's basically flatlined at around 12-13% now for the week. Had the injury tag next to him all week with an illness. I think he's just fine. I don't know how to factor that in. We've seen him get hurt in like pregame warmups in New England and had weird stuff happen here and there with Chris Olave, but like having Taysom Hill out for Alvin Kamara, gigantic increase to his touchdown expectation. And hey, it's not like he wasn't getting in the box before. He had the 2 touchdowns last week, despite having the vulture that is Taysom Hill out there. Shout out BYU Cougars. But he's very, very, he's somebody that I'm going to have a lot of, but I don't have many lineups where I don't have at least him or McCaffrey. But I am like jamming McCaffrey again this week, 60+% of him. It looks like coming up for me. We don't have the Tyreek Hill ceilings. We don't have a lot of these like guaranteed ceilings, but I'm able to get a team with a 30 implied total with a guy who's been routinely north of -250 to score a freaking touchdown every single week and scores a touchdown like seemingly every single week. They're going to just smash Seattle. The one thing I guess I'm a little bit worried of is if Geno Smith doesn't play, they get up major early, and then they just kind of take the foot off the gas and they turn it over to Jordan Mason. It looks as though what's his face isn't going to be back yet again this week. So I feel pretty confident in saying McCaffrey's somebody that you could have as much of as possible, and I wouldn't feel bad about it. Austin Eckler, I'm going to bypass him, which sounds awful. Of course, this will be the week he rips off like a 75-yard touchdown run now, but at 7,600, we got the report that Isaiah Spiller now going to also be joining the fray. That's not exciting. Definitely seen some decrease to the opportunities for Austin Eckler in recent weeks. We're going to see it even further. So it's not just Joshua Kelly, but sounds like they're going to activate Isaiah Spiller and bring him into the mix as well. So that creates Travis Etienne, Kyron Williams, your only other 7K guys. I know the weather's terrible there in Baltimore, but a guy with 90+% of the snaps, I'm going to be overweight to at 4% in Kyron Williams. You have any interest in the other 7K guys?
Not much in Eckler. I think he's just a late swap guy if you're down. Kyron, I do have a lot of interest in. There's not really much else to add from what you said. He's just an opportunity play in a relatively difficult matchup against a good Baltimore defense, but he's diced up matchups right on par with the Ravens. And a lot of times, if your volume's really good, it doesn't even matter. You can just volume your way to a good game. He's expensive now, so there is opportunity cost, but still a good price-adjusted play, in my opinion. And if you're worried about the weather, this would actually like work in his favor, more run-heavy scripts. Otherwise, I don't have much interest in ETN. Dearness Johnson, I think, does impact him, and it's a very difficult matchup to begin with. So that'll do it for me in the 7K range.
Amazing. We're going to get to the popular backs here after I go through tiers for Ace of Spades. Tier 1 here. These are all according to our projections, straight down the line. Tier 1, Patrick Mahomes. Tier 2, Christian McCaffrey. Tier 3, Travis Kelce, slightly over Jamar Chase. Tier 4, Michael Pittman by quite a bit over Kyron Williams. Kyron Williams second in the tier, though. That's fun. Brock Purdy in Tier 5. Tier 6, Josh Jacobs. Tier 7, Joe Mixon. And Tier 8, Zach Moss by a mile. The best of the tiers to just jam Zach Moss and move along with your life. So hopefully that helps you, Ace of Spades. Great to see you, not just in the NBA streets on NBA Live Before Lock, but on shows where Greg can't make fun of me and I get to live my life as the person that I am and not be beaten down, downtrodden, hurt by a co-host. Actually, Matt Gajewski, we'll get into it from time to time, but in a nice spirited way, whereas Greg is just mean. He's just mean. All right, let's go to the popular running backs. This is what everybody is willing. I mean, Zach Moss. Let's just start there. We're running it back this week, yes?
Yeah, he's the best player on the slate.
I think he is too. So I'm glad that we're there. I think, well, him and McCaffrey, I have more McCaffrey, but that's simply like I'm getting the raw points and moving along. But Zach Moss is a phenomenal play. Tell the people why.
Yeah, luckily he's cheap. So most likely you should be playing these guys together because it's not difficult to get them. Basically, Zach Moss is priced like, I don't know, Javonte Williams, but he has the role of Alvin Kamara. And the only reason people aren't clicking him again is because he had a bad week last week, which happens for everyone in the NFL. Look back beyond 1 week and you'll see plenty of awesome box scores for Zach Moss and his opportunities honestly being underprojected. And I mean, a lot of this is difficult. You have basically one running back touching the ball. Books aren't going to project that. I mean, they have injury risk, things like that. So if he plays 100% of the snaps, I honestly think you should boost his projection or boost his ROI percentage because he is being underprojected and he legitimately might play 100% of the snaps. He's the best player on the whole slate.
Yeah. Oh, on the whole slate. That's where we're going. I think there's a reason he's popular. He's a fantastic play yet again here. And Cincinnati, I think it could be an even better spot than what you had with Tennessee last week. Tennessee, they've done this a couple of times to chalky running backs, and we talked about that. Didn't have 100% of Zach Moss last week, even though it was something that I think the data probably would have preferred. And again, we have the Sims tool that does all of that work for you, shows you exactly kind of the path to go. And you can obviously use your I know ball takes from time to time, but you don't want to screw with the data too much because the data wins out in the long run. A lot of the top lineups, a lot of winning lineups in the industry last week still had Zach Moss because there was nobody in the price range remotely close to him. And it kind of got you everything else you wanted to in your lineups. At 5,900, he has the entire backfield. That's not changing in the absence of Jonathan Taylor. So I'm completely with you. Play Zach Moss. Don't think twice about it. Everybody else can call you a chalk donkey and do whatever else. You know, it is what it is. But we talked about the expensive chalk. We talked about Zach Moss chalk. We talked about Javonte Williams from the get-go, somebody that we're not on. What are we doing in this 6K range with the Bijan Robinson, Rashad White chalk? Because for me, I'm just not getting there. I think on other slates, it would make a lot of sense for me. But with the existence of CEH, getting to some Jerick McKinnon, some sub 5K running backs that I really like taking shots on in a great game environment there, I don't know what else to do besides not get to them and just use that ownership elsewhere. Are you landing on anybody in the 6K range at all?
Yeah, I think there's some pretty decent leverage spots for large fields specifically.
Yeah.
And one of them is like Josh Jacobs over Rashad White. You basically have the same role. One of them is around 15% owned. One of them is, I'm guessing, going to come in a little below that, probably like 10 in Josh Jacobs. So I would just make that swap like 1v1 if forced to in large field specifically. I always gamble on the Detroit backs for large field. They're always difficult to gamble on because they're really game flow dependent. Gibbs going to play more on negative game script. Montgomery, he's a better play when, you know, they play with a lead. Bijan's tricky. His role is pretty good, but you always have the risk of, you know, if they play for behind, are they just going to abandon the run entirely? Because Bijan actually hasn't had that good of a pass game role, which surprises me. You would think that would be where he thrives in this offense. But Algier is going to play considerably. Honestly, the best situation for him is probably Atlanta winning, and then they just run the ball 40 times. He gets around 20, and Algier gets around 20. But he's always a difficult player to click when he's going to be somewhat chalky. So he's one I particularly struggle with. Otherwise, these guys are mainly just leverage plays for me, so nothing I'm crazy exposed to. Again, I think the 3 best running back plays are McCaffrey, Kamara, and Zach Moss. And I think Christian McCaffrey is a better play than Zach Moss, chat. You also have salary tags associated with these players. It's not
There is
like,
definitely that.
yeah, obviously I'm not insane.
I project Zach Moss for more than Christian McCaffrey.
And I also project Alvin Kamara significantly more. Like, I'm not stupid. You realize there are salary tags associated with players.
I have noticed.
You noticed this. I mean, chat barely has ever played DFS.
More. Give me more of this Matthew Gajewski. Oh, ultimate power.
It's like use your brain.
Great. $4.99. Hey guys, Flacco had 44 passes last game. He did in a dome in Los Angeles where it's nice and warm. Marquise Goodwin is active. How do you feel about that skinny stack in the millie or use Cooper/Moore? I have 0 Joe Flacco. I don't even know if I ended up playing any Elijah Moore. I don't know. I know Marquise Goodwin once upon a time, Olympic sprinter Marquise Goodwin, but like, I'm not going to play anything from Cleveland today.
Yeah, it's really hard. It's just like, do we really? I had a debate with someone about Cleveland earlier today because Flacco, I mean, he's been an upgrade on what they've had at quarterback this year. And he honestly, in very small samples, been an upgrade on Deshaun Watson. But like, Flacco's 38 years old. We have a massive sample of Flacco through his career. Do we really think he's made significant strides in his game? And the other thing is, like, if Cleveland is winning this game, which very well might happen with the banged up Trevor Lawrence, down Christian Kirk, how many times are they going to have Flacco throw the ball? I mean, I would guess they probably throw it maybe like 5 more times with Flacco compared to DTR. But I think this team probably wants to run the ball and not have their game rely on Flacco's talent, if that makes sense.
Oh, it definitely makes sense. Joe Flacco, 38 years old. If you're older than me and you're playing quarterback in the NFL, I don't know. It might be time to think that it's a tough spot. That's a little tough ask. The weather has improved there to some extent, right? No, I mean it's looking much better. Wind's only around 15. It looks like is the high. So again, there is that rain that exists, and I know somebody from Cleveland I think was in the chat talking about that a second ago. But it is a spot for me personally that I'm just not going to be getting to.
Yeah, I think Cleveland's tricky. I can, like, the way I see, like, you probably want Flacco is if Cleveland gets down in this game, because I mean, he is really cheap. They will let him throw the ball when it's down. So he's almost like he reminds me of Desmond Ridder in a way, where I think he's very dependent on a certain game script for him to get there. If they're winning, I think he's dead.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good shout out. I think that's like the right way of looking at it. Cool. That's all we have there for that. We'll get to other running back plays here. Again, Drake London, Michael, $2 super chat. Appreciate it. Is Drake London overrated chalk? Oh, we will talk about Atlanta. I mean, I have a couple of Desmond Ridder stacks. I do not have any Drake London by himself, so that'll be fun. Hogwired, $1.99. Thoughts about Moss and Mixon in the same lineup? Hey, let's pull up the Sims tool here, Mike Lawrence, because I think that this is something that's definitely showing up quite a bit for me, where Mixon getting mixed in a little bit there. I'm not in love with playing Joe Mixon on a slate where I can get contrarian. I love getting to David Montgomery at 6,400 in tournaments. I like getting to some of these cheap U running backs. Chuba Hubbard, somebody was bringing up in the chat. Do I like him? I absolutely do. I even think there's like not just the Kansas City spot, but like I don't know how Seattle is going to play out here with Charbonnet and Kenneth Walker III. There's chances where I would think they're both expected to play here. Kenneth Walker, I mean, this is something where, like, if Geno Smith ends up being out, could we see some kind of a weird mix there? I don't know. There's some tournament pivots. I'm actually clicking on Alexander Madison's name because I hate money. Again, I hate money. But looking at the Sims tool specifically, looking at the contest generator, if you're going to fire that up, and we'll do that at the wide receiver position, Mike Lawrence. But I think there's no issue whatsoever. I know if you're hand building, it might seem, oh, maybe I don't want to get running backs on the same game. Sims tool does all the work for you, allows you to know without a doubt many lineups that I'm looking at here that are my top projected with both of them in it. Do you have any problem whatsoever having running backs in the same game environment?
I don't really have much of a problem with it. It's not like ideal because game script is a thing. I think you just have to work with like a narrower range of game scripts. If one team blows the other team out, you're probably not happy with it. But if it remains competitive on both sides and it plays close to the spread, both running backs should remain involved. So I think at best, a tiebreaker, not generally something I worry about a ton.
All right. Michael Dooley, $5. What a timely super chat. Love this from Michael Dooley. Because then I don't have to go back and remember, but I do remember the wide receiver one. And plus, we appreciate all of the super chats. What are your thoughts on the Baltimore backfield? I hate the Baltimore backfield. That is my thoughts. And it's not that they're not good because they're going to run a lot. Harbaugh likes to run it a lot, and it's going to be what it is. But Gus Edwards, I feel as though, other than best ball, where I have tons of him, he's just punished me time and time again with these 2 touchdown games. Do you know how many touchdowns he's had in the last 5 weeks that Baltimore has played, Matt?
I don't off the top of my head.
It's more than you think. 8. He has 8 touchdowns the last 5 weeks. Do you know how absurd that is for a guy that we never talk about in DFS because he's 5,900 and it's just impossible to get him right?
I mean, you're saying this, and now that I have the actual information, it makes a lot of sense because I've been rostering Lamar Jackson a lot. And man, it would be nice if he had a rushing score once in a while.
So let's talk correlation to your bankroll. Gus Edwards is doing this. Lamar Jackson is doing this. It is on the same plane. It is pain and suffering. Welcome to NFL DFS from time to time. But thank you so much for the super chat. Hopefully, if nothing else, it'll make you laugh when inevitably this is the week that Keaton Mitchell just goes ballistic. He went ballistic against Seattle or whatever it was a couple of weeks ago. But yeah, I'm not going to be chasing anything there from Baltimore in that game environment. But thank you for the super chat. Low-owned tournament plays. Chuba Hubbard. Nobody's clicking on Chuba Hubbard. 6.4%. I'm happy to be clicking on it. Alexander Madison. Maybe one time in my entire lifetime I'll see Alexander Madison score fantasy points. I'm not sure what to make of it. And then sub 5K, we know the McKinnon can be a pivot off of CEH, and CEH is going to pull up quite a bit of ownership here. 15% ownership going to CEH. Like getting to some McKinnon. Who are some of the low-owned tournament darts that you are going to be taking as we head over to the wide receiver position next?
So for low-owned plays, we're exclusively doing the cheaper guys. We mostly talked about the expensive guys.
Yep. Yes.
All right. I'm with you on Madison. These are all guys that are in a small portion of my portfolio just for reference. Like Madison's going to be in 4 of my 150 lineups, but he's in play. Both defenses are horrible, so I think there's reasons you'd want to stack that game. Chuba Hubbard, I think, is my favorite at 5,600. He's also being underprojected. So this is like an exercise you should do in your head. A great example is the Baltimore Ravens receivers, but it kind of parallels with the Carolina running backs. So throughout the course of the year, you have like Odell Beckham playing 60% of the routes, Rashad Bateman at 50. Then you have a 1 week sample where Rashad Bateman shoots up to 80%. Beckham goes down to like 30. How do you project it? A lot of times, like books, middle it, player projections, middle it. And you have these small samples that you can either put extra weight into, or you can just follow the projections. Chuba Hubbard is one of these situations where they have made a shift seemingly at the running back position, and he's iced Miles Sanders. This hasn't been happening the whole season, so you have to make a decision. If you think Chuba Hubbard is going to remain the lead back and see that extra work, you need to boost his projection or boost his ROI. If you don't think that's going to happen, you can leave him alone. I think there's a real chance that Chuba Hubbard does continue to see this extra work he got the last week. So he's a player I've personally boosted, and I'm trying to get more of the field, and something I'm definitely going to do in these lineup builds.
Also, New Orleans defense has been kind of dog doo-doo in recent weeks. It's not something that I expect to continue too much, but at the same time, there's no denying that it hasn't exactly been rainbows and butterflies. It's compromise that moves us along.
What? What is that saying? What's that from?
I don't mind spending every day
Is that a song?
out on your corner in the pouring rain. Look for the girl with a broken smile. Ask her if she wants to stay a while, and she will be loved.
I've heard that song at some point in my life, but I don't know what it is.
It's Maroon 5, but it's fine.
That explains why I don't know it.
I'm a tool. Anywho, we have friends, Owner's Box. They're fantastic. We have all the tools and content to help you make some money over here at our sponsor, Owner's Box. And here's kind of what they have going on every single week. It's called Overlay. Overlay is the best thing for your bankroll because it is putting expected value into your lineups before you even build them. Then you add the Sims tool and its capabilities to the mix, where Owner's Box directly able to just sim out your best lineups. You can copy, paste, put those into Owner's Box, and you can make yourself some positive EV lineups in just 5 minutes here before lock. And again, let's check in on that overlay here, Mike Lawrence. Tell me exactly what we're looking at here, because I have all my stuff done over there, but it's available in 36 states there as well as Canada. Oh, hey, good to see you up there up north. Get those snowshoes on. It's cold. But definitely be checking out Owner's Box, my friends, because they are doing everything that they can to provide DFS players with opportunity, whether that's a $250 first match deposit bonus, whether it's the free stuff you're getting like the $5 lineup, $5 contest ticket when you sign up, whether it's overlay. Again, the overlay portion of this, when you're staring at a ridiculous allotment here of overlay constantly here. Let's go to the feature, go to all. You haven't clicked on just the one specific game set, but if you look at these lineups every single week and you fire these up, you can do game stacks. You don't have to deal with defenses and kickers, which is so nice over at Owner's Box. Again, they are catering to DFS players like you to help you make more money week in, week out, especially on these main slates on Sundays with massive overlay here. Go to the Sunday main there. You got to go to the Sunday main there, Mike Lawrence. There we go. But anyway, it is unbelievable stuff that we have going every single week at Owner's Box. And hey, you sign up at the link below or in the video description box right over there where we have everything listed. Really cool stuff existing with them week in, week out. So check it out, my friends. SC, Eric Lindquist is unmatched in the personality department. No doubt about that. Love it. You said personality. I think means positive personality, not shitty personality, although I'm sure there's people who think both. But there's no doubt that Owner's Box, my friends, this is definitely a spot you want to be signed up. You want to be checking out everything they have to offer week in, week out, because there aren't enough sites that are providing you with this kind of opportunity. So Owner's Box, sign up for them. $250 first match deposit bonus in that link below. Really cool stuff, friends. Really cool stuff. Again, just over 55% filled as of right now. Great stuff. Eric, you're the man, even when Greg's hating. I know. Greg's short and angry and a mean boss. Yeah, he's probably my boss. It's painful. Nathan Perkins, $2. How scary is 68% Browning at QB? It would make my butthole pucker.
Yeah, that's a lot. Even from just like a risk perspective, I don't know that you want to be 60+% on any QB.
Mm-hmm. But there are wide receivers I think you could be getting to something like that with, although it's more running backs that I'm jamming. And then there's a lot of wide receivers fitting in with my top stats here. But we got to start with Keenan Allen because he's 8,600. He's getting all of these opportunities. You have pivots and digs. We'll talk about Justin Jefferson. Amon-Ra St. Brown's the guy that I like the most relative to ownership out of the 8K plays. But do you have a favorite amongst these 8K wide receivers?
All right, so 8K wide receivers. I'll pull up my large field. First and foremost, looks like I will be it's pretty flat for me, but I'm honestly getting more of the 7K range. For the guys I have in the 8K range, it's Keenan Allen number 1, but I don't want to like go all in on Keenan Allen and say this because I'm still under the field to him. He's just my most exposed in this range. And honestly, it probably is just coming down to receiver has a lot of good plays. Keenan Allen's drawing decent amount of ownership, and it's a volatile position. So this actually surprised me a little bit because I had quite a bit of Herbert, but gonna look into that. Looks like I might be overexposed to Guyton and Johnston. So maybe this will come up, but yeah, Keenan I think is the best play, but sprinkling in Justin Jefferson and Amon-Ra too.
Those are good things. We have these super chats. These all apply to wide receivers, so it's good stuff. OGKRG. There we go. $2. What are the best wide receiver plays on the slate? Matt, what wide receivers are you getting to the most on the chalky end of the board?
DJ Moore,
love.
Brandon Ayuk,
love.
Mike Evans are my 3 most owned. They're not exactly the most chalky. So I mean, like I'm trying to
That's
fade
fine.
a lot of the chalk. So I'm sorting by ownership. Like I'm trying to come in under to Rasheed, under to Drake, under to Mingo, under to Keenan. Pittman I'm pretty neutral with. And then I mentioned DJ Moore. I'm playing more of the field than him, more of the field than Ayuk. So yeah, I mean, a tough question to answer. I mean, if you want me to poke holes in those guys,
No. Rashee Rice, I like a lot too this week. Going to be somebody I get to. Cortland Sutton, again, he scores a touchdown on every day ending in Y, as long as it's Sunday, because that's usually when he's playing football. Debo Samuel, 6,800, run it back, had infinity % last week. I'll have infinity % this week. And then we'll get to the cheap end of the board. Nobody wants to click on Trey Palmer. Interesting. I'll do that. I'll click on Parker Washington. The Sims tool absolutely loves Parker Washington and that opportunity. Yes, it's an improved game environment. Yes, now it's Justin Herbert throwing him the football. And Parker Washington, where did he go to school?
Parker Washington, he went to Penn State.
Yeah, he went to Penn State University. He was pretty good there, wasn't he? He got hurt at like the end of his, was it juniors? No, he got hurt at the end of his senior year. And that's kind of why his draft stock dipped, but is what it is.
Yeah, he broke his ankle. He didn't even have a pro day.
That's bad. If Trevor Lawrence broke his ankle, he'd be playing football.
Trevor Lawrence has never missed a game.
It's just absurd. Anywho, hopefully that helps you out. And in a vacuum from Hogwire, $1.99, Zay Jones or Jonathan Mingo. Both make me, I'm not going to say the thing I said before. I apologize to all the kids out there, but we are looking at an interesting sub 4K board for sure. You and I brought up Mooney. That can't exactly feel good. I like Trey Palmer a little bit here too against Atlanta in that game environment. But Jonathan Mingo, the sub 4K guy getting by far the most ownership. He's a young wide receiver. Maybe they're looking to develop him. 16 targets the last 2 weeks. Just feels like thin chalk to me. I don't know. What are we doing here at wide receiver with Jonathan Mingo versus Zay Jones?
I'd rather play Zay Jones straight up, but I mean, all these receivers are chalk. So that's just in a vacuum. I'll be playing like I'm almost dead even with them both. I have slightly more Mingo in my lineups, but he also saves you $200 that goes somewhere on one of the tightest price slates we've had in a while. And I mean, I'm just below 10% on Zay Jones. So we're talking like razor thin margins. A lot of that's just coming down to game stacks and stuff. There's a ton of pivots that I like in this range. So it's not just, all right, we're going to double down on Mingo. I kind of like fading the chalk in this range by spreading it out to all the dusty players. I mean, most of the players you'll get to in this range are bad. You just have to kind of eat that at some point. And it sucks. This is a DraftKings pricing thing. If they would loosen it up a little bit, you wouldn't have to be considering these guys.
Yeah, just loosen it up, get a couple of drinks at a party, start
like,
socializing,
dude,
get yourself out there.
Go back to the original pricing on defenses. Like why can't we have a 2K defense? Why did we increase defenses across the board?
I don't.
What is the point of that?
Oh,
now we have to play like worse skill position players. And like chalk defenses are like 3K and above. Like it's a terrible tactic from DraftKings.
So in the 5K range, there's a couple of guys that I have highlighted, ready to rock with. Rashee Rice, 5,400, like getting to him. You've got Zay Flowers now, absent a lot of these pieces. The weather sucks. It's terrible, but so does the Rams secondary. Jacoby Myers at 1%. I'm just going to throw it out there. Minnesota's defense has been improved, but there are still problems and warts that I can pull out and show you here on the secondary for this Minnesota team. And I will just take a 1% Jacoby Myers in large field and live with having my 5%, things of that nature. But anybody in the 5K range, because Garrett Wilson is pulling lots of ownership, and I don't want to do it.
Dude, I think this is wrong. Like in this weather game, I just have a really hard time believing he's going to be owned.
I've seen crazier things. Well, I'll put it that way. I've seen crazier shit than like him possibly getting steamed up here.
I mean, he's egregiously cheap for being Garrett Wilson. I understand he's playing with Zach Wilson, and that should make you feel pretty bad. But I mean, he is 5.5K. They are going to have to throw the ball. I mean, he was like a borderline first-round pick in fantasy football this offseason when we thought it was going to be Aaron Rodgers. He's extremely talented.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really struggling with him because he's, unless you just severely dock him for the weather, which I think is live. This is the game it's most live for. I mean, like it's getting to a point. This is like a one thing that DraftKings did well is they put Garrett Wilson at a price point where you actually have to consider him. So I gave him some extra docs just because I don't want my day riding on the Jets. But I'm still going to have a little bit of Garrett Wilson. But man, he might be the most difficult evaluation on the entire board. He's really tough.
Yep, it's a tough one. Also, we haven't seen Zach Wilson play in a couple weeks because you were bad. Go to timeout. Oh, hey, we need you. Come out and play at recess. That's the Jets are treating Zach Wilson like legitimately the kid that is I don't know. It's just he got scolded for being bad, and then it's like, oh well, you're actually better than anything else we have. So
I mean, they have so many problems, dude. It's not just him. Yeah. He is bad.
And I like Salah. Yeah, like he's a guy that I like. I want to cheer for him, but also this is egregious the way this team has been handled.
Well, you have an offense handpicked by Aaron Rodgers with Randall Cobb and Allen Lazard, and they're playing guys like Jason Brownlee. And I mean, your play caller
Xavier Gibson now.
Yeah, your play caller is handpicked by Aaron Rodgers, who I mean he likes, but last time we saw Nathaniel Hackett coach anything, they almost crucified him in Denver. So, I mean, like, there's a lot of bad things with New York. The offensive line is horrific. Anyway, as it relates to Garrett Wilson, you got a lot of risk. He's not, like, super owned, but even any ownership, I'm like, Garrett Wilson maybe needs to be at, like, 5% for me to feel really good about him.
We got Beckham. We've got a number of these guys. We got lots of people. Terrible quarterback, terrible weather, no Wilson. Yeah, exactly. I don't want to be playing any Garrett Wilson today with this kind of ownership coming in on him. But anything else at the wide receiver position that you really want to highlight? I feel like we talked through a lot of it. There's no ownership going on anybody. If you're looking for the Zay Jones pivot, I'm running Alec Pierce back again this week. I understand it might be 2 for 60, but it could also be 2 touchdowns for those 2 catches on deep shots. Gardner Minshew likes to air it out. Cincinnati, decent total. Alec Pierce, I'm going to take some shots on again. But anything else you want to just throw out there for the people?
Yeah, I have more interest going down to this 4K range rather than playing guys like Garrett Wilson. I like Downs, it sounds like, for a lot of the same reasons you like Pierce. You have like a 2-week sample of Pierce being more involved, but prior to that, his like targets per route run was below 10%, which is horrifying. Downs had dealt with the injury. I don't know. You kind of got to evaluate, do you think this is a blip or do you think Alec Pierce has legitimately earned those targets? I tend to side with Downs, and he's not really that owned, sub 10%. I love Judy as a leverage play. Some of his underlying metrics are really good, plays every single snap. For whatever reason, Russell Wilson has a lot of first read stuff to Cortland Sutton at the expense of Judy, but the price is now down. Judy's been like, you talk about Darnell Mooney streaking downfield on these montages wide open, and Fields doesn't look at him. That is the exact same thing with Russell Wilson to Judy. So it's not for lack of Judy being somewhat talented. It's Russell Wilson being a doofus. Otherwise, Drake London, I'm going to come in under the field to Drake London. Anytime you have a guy on Atlanta approaching like 20% as a pass catcher, be like an auto fade for me, even though Drake London's kind of like the Garrett Wilson light, where he's just hyper talented. The offense does him no favors. Otherwise, beyond that, it's just getting to the punts where I'm spread pretty thin.
I have to respond to my parents quick because, of course, never know what I'm doing. Never know that I'm on a show in front of 4,000 people. Hit the like button. Hi, Bill or Lorraine. Oh, you're not watching. Cool, because you don't care about your son. It's okay. It's fine. Merry Christmas to all, and to all a good night. Odd Shopper is great, guys. Odd Shopper, you guys want to be signing up over there as we head to the tight end position. Get yourself a little bit of goodness here. Positive EV betting. Have an opportunity, friends, to sort by positive EV. It is a market-based approach. We're comparing sports books across the line. Yes, ESPN just added to the fray. Bet365 in specific states. So many niche little sports books as well that are added to the mix, in addition to the monsters, the DraftKings, the FanDuels, the points bets, everything across the board. BetMGM, Caesars. You can compare against sharp sports books, and you can find the best line. And it's been back tested, friends. It's going to win you money. Yes, there might be some unders that you might have to be clicking on. I know nobody likes to click the old unders, as Greg Ehrenberg so loves to tweet out. Again, love you, Greg. Not just because you're my boss, but you have Odd Shopper, friends. Sign up, take advantage right now. It's only $14.95 now for the week, $49.95 for the monthly. Awesome stuff here going on at Odd Shopper, along with Stochastic. Love it so much, my friends. Corey Shea, $1.99. Zay Jones, Quentin Williams, or Mingo for a wide receiver 3. Probably
Jones.
Mingo, but it doesn't feel good. Oh, Zay Jones, you like Zay Jones the most?
Yeah, it's close though. Not
Okay.
significantly.
That's cool. Also, you can use code Lindy or code Matt. Get yourself 20% off Odd Shopper. Wanted to throw that in here as well. SMH Eric Lowe on Holiday Cheer. I'm so happy. Be nice to your parents. I love my parents, but they just don't love knowing my schedule or the fact that I've done this every Sunday for the last 3 years. And yet 13 minutes before kickoff, my dad's calling me. Hey, what do you think about the Vikings today? They don't play for, I don't know. I'm going to have a great day until they start. That's for sure. But let's talk tight end for the people. Travis Kelce. He's good at football. Maybe he's less good at football than before, but he's still good at football, and nobody wants to play Travis Kelce. So I'll play Travis Kelce at 9.7% ownership in that game environment. You have Hawkinson, TJ Hawkinson dance in my khaki pants. That didn't really work. George Kittle, Sam Laporta, 6K and above. Where are we going here at the tight end position?
6K and above is a little tricky just with the tight pricing on the slate. I know I've been saying that a lot, but it's true. These guys are all sprinklings in my lineup. The one I have the most of is Kelce. I still think he's really the only one that can like break your slate. And I mean, if Kelce puts up 20, the slate's so bad that you just might end up like auto winning depending on the rest of your lineup. But with that said, I'm still coming in under 10% of my lineups just because he's so prohibitive. Laporta, I think he's being overprojected. We had the stretch of the season without Jamison Williams, and now his routes have dropped slightly, but books are still projecting him as he's in that full route share. So I'll happily fade Laporta, especially now with increased target projection or competition. Hawkinson's another guy just too expensive. With both these guys, I'd rather find my way up or down. Kittle, I like a little bit more in that game with Purdy. I still prefer Ayuk overall, so I don't have a ton of Kittle. And then I have sprinklings of Kincaid. He's also being underprojected right now with the return of Dawson Knox. And maybe it's right. Maybe he does go back to being like a 60% player with Knox in double tight end sets and stuff and playing more in base packages. But I tend to think that Knox affects Shakir more than Kincaid at this point. But I could be wrong. So not a lot of interest in the expensive tight ends. I'll punt and try to play McCaffrey, Keenan Allen, and some other, I think, safer plays.
Yeah, didn't get to say Shakira, because he's not really in play for me this week. I got to imagine they go to more 12. Buffalo loves going 12. They didn't have an opportunity to go 12 unless it was Quentin Morris, and Quentin Morris sucks. So there we are. Really, really enjoyable stuff here from Khalil Shakir on a couple of weeks, but now rip with the return of Dawson Knox. Might even have a little Dawson Knox. I might have to get a little frisky naughty here on a Sunday. That's for sure. Brevin Jordan, I hate the game environment. We've all talked about it, but he was on the field for 70% of snaps. You're not going to have Dalton Schultz there again, and maybe some more short target throws here from CJ Stroud in the weather because it is awful. And then anybody sub 3K that you even brought up, because Kylan Granson, I have like a share, but there's nothing else for me down here.
Under 3K?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I mean, like this is the greasy. Under 3K, I think you could play Michael Mayer, maybe Tanner Hudson, and Noah Fant.
Oh,
and I don't like
you want a Fanta?
I mean, I don't have anything positive to say about any of these guys other than they save you salary.
Yeah, Tanner Hudson's actually pulling ownership, which Tanner Hudson's actually a good pass catching tight end from.
I don't think he's a good pass catching tight end.
Where did he go to school?
I actually don't know this. Do you know where did he go to some Pac-12 school or did he go to Iowa State?
Buddy, I got to double check this. Just now I'm double checking myself. Yeah, I had no idea. Southern Arkansas. Nobody fucking knew that. I didn't. I'm so glad I stumped you. That's the first time I've ever stumped you in my entire life. We've done this show for 3 years together. I've never come up with a player that you didn't know where they went to school. Also, where is Southwest Arkansas? That's like saying Southwest Texas Biblical. It's not a real place.
I don't know where it is.
There's somebody in chat from Southwest Arkansas. Shout out the Goats. Yeah. What is their mascot?
I don't know, dude. For all the college football I watch, I don't catch a lot of FCS, which I'm guessing that is.
Southwest Arkansas mascot.
You know who I bet knows is Ben Rasa.
So you type in Southwest Arkansas mascot, and then it's just the Razorback that shows up because nobody believes that Southern Arkansas is a real place.
I bet Ben Rasa knows.
I bet he does. OGKRG, $5. We have like, what, 7 minutes to go, 6 minutes to go? Smash the like button. Make sure you have your lineups in. But he asks you, as we head to the defense, what is the Matt Gajewski approved DST play of the day? I think we could just call this the wagon.
Defense wagon.
Yeah, we're going to make it a wagon because I want to see the graphic, Mike Lawrence. It is his wagon. Oh, you don't have the graphic. Oh, that's so sad to me. You know what? It's okay. Jordan Klein, I blame this on you. Matt Gajewski, your favorite defense of the day is...
The New York Jets.
I love the New York Jets. I also love the Cleveland Browns. Cleveland Browns, really hard not to like the Cleveland Browns in this spot against Jacksonville, against a one-footed Trevor Lawrence.
One-footed Trevor Lawrence is correct.
I don't, it just kind of is what it is. I mean, the man just, why won't you die? The Mule Riders, that's legitimately their school mascot for Southwest Arkansas.
Sounds pretty sick.
That is an awesome name of a mascot. I might have to be a Mule Riders fan now. Can you say Mule Riders 5 times fast?
No.
You're right. You're right. You're right.
You're not even going to try?
No, I need to redo my sim because I don't want to have this much Tanner Hudson.
You have like 4 minutes.
I know. I thought I was good until I saw this. I'm like, what the heck is this doing in here?
I know. They're the Mule Riders. That's what they are.
So now I'm fixing this.
Oh, you're talking about the Sims. Whatever.
I'm talking about the Sims, not Tanner, or not the Mule Riders.
Well, let's go to the lineup generator here, Mike, and fire up some lineups for the people as we get out of here. Again, $14.95 for the lineup generator. You're going to be able to lineup generate all of the goodness for Showdown as well. So you get a week of it starting now. Main slate, Sunday main slate, Monday main slate there for the Showdown slate, Thursday Showdown slate, and again Monday doubleheader, baby. We got 2 football games coming your way tomorrow. Would be an awesome time to check out the lineup generator. Again, just $14.95 for the week. Really great stuff here. It is taking the Sims tool, the power of the Sims tool. It is curating out those lineups, finding you the best available based on things that you want, whether it's 1 stack, 2 stack, blue stack, red stack. Again, I don't know why I said it that way, but one man stacks plus run back. You can do chalky lineups, balanced lineups, or I love going to the contrarian lineups, seeing what it spits out. Love the power of this tool to be able to build you lineups, positive EV lineups in an instant. Sign up for it. Hey, if you're struggling to finish out your lineups now, get the lineup generator. You'll be able to finish up your lineups in no time. Click, 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 click. Click, click, boom, or whatever that song was. Great stuff there from the lineup generator. And from our Sims team, just our dev team is outrageously talented. So building out this tool and having the Sims work for you, great stuff. My favorite defense to be getting to here on today's slate. I want to see what is the defense that we got the most in the lineup generator there, Mike Lawrence. I'm just curious. Because I'm just getting so much Cleveland, it's silly. What?
Yeah.
Oh my. Oh my.
Apparently they're
don't
going to
know.
be on the field a lot.
Quick now, who is a good play? Zach Moss is a good play. Christian McCaffrey's a good play. Those are good plays.
Good plays.
Very, 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 very good plays. I have too much Chuba Hubbard. This is not going to go well for me.
Yeah, you never know. Chuba Hubbard's pretty sick.
He's pretty sick, but he could also completely bone me.
Yeah, what is too much?
31%. That's too much.
That's not that bad.
That's a lot. It's more than I want, if we're going to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to be like 6%, so you're going to be like 6 times the field.
Yeah. I don't know if I need to be 6 times the field on him right now.
Yeah, it's quite a bit. I don't know.
You got your lineups in, yes?
Nope.
Awesome.
Well, I did, and then I messed up, so now I'm fixing them.
So stop it. Stop talking to my friend Matt that way. You're special. And gosh darn it, people like you.
It was my own fault.
Okay. Well, there's that.
All right, uploading. In with 1 minute to spare. We're good.
God. It's incredible how
And
talented
where did
you are.
I finish on Tanner Hudson? Because I didn't get to check.
No idea. I ended up with some Isaiah Likely that I'm likely not going to be able to change before lock.
I ended up with 4% Hudson. Okay, I'm okay with that. Better
All right,
than my like
everybody's-
30%.
All right, these are good things. These are better things. Smash the like button. Matt, who scores the first touchdown of the slate today?
I was gonna say Brandon Ayuk, but I don't know if they're in the late window.
They're in the late window. They're in San Francisco.
That's
Come
why I
on.
hesitated. I just thought of who I like the most to score. Darnell Mooney, man.
Darnell Mooney would make me so unbelievably thing I can't say here on the internet because I have, respect sometimes. Anyway, smash the like button, everybody. If not for me, for my friend Matt Gajewski there, Matt_Gajewski, and for producer Mike Lawrence, doing an amazing job here on Live Before Lock, filling in for Jordan Klein. Great to see him here early in the morning, except for I hope the Birds lose, and that's just kind of the way that it is. Although I'm
Apologies
going to probably
for
end
my
up betting them.
raspy voice.
Oh,
Happens.
well, I have a little raspy voice too. It's beautiful stuff, friends. Smash the like button as we get the heck up out of here. Matt, any final words for the people?
Thank you guys for being here. Always appreciate doing this for you. Somebody take something down today. Let's go.
Don't forget, Stochastic Avatar, have it queued up. Hopefully I see you guys at the top of some leaderboards. For Matt, for Mike, I'm Eric. We'll see you guys next week.